Chapter 405. At night, in the Minotaur Valley, several tens of thousands of minotaurs were celebrating. The valley was filled with the fragrance of meat and wine. Chu Tian was sitting in the middle of the valley with the Fox clan around a bonfire. Dolores was sitting on the side with her silver-white hair flowing down. Her hands were holding a piece of barbecued meat as she ate it in large bites. "You really are something." Dolores was very dissatisfied looking at the Minotaur's happy appearances. It was like these bulls being happy was a bad thing for her, so she complained to Chu Tian beside her, "It's fine if you say you sent food, but these stupid bulls can eat anything. They can even digest wolf meat in their stomachs, even the toughest blade grass is not a problem. You just had to send this good food, you're letting these fellows off too easily." After saying this, she fiercely ate a few more bites. The forest natives ate raw meat and their food conditions were far behind. Natives were natives in the end, they couldn't compare to civilized humans. Even in human society, Miracle Commerce's source energy cooking food was the best of the best. Even for an elf who pursued a high quality of life, Vivian fell in love with the source energy food the first time she tasted it. The elves also had very high cooking skills. They could combine demon beast meat and herbs to make delicious food, but the elves' cooking process was as complicated as refining pills. How could they be like Miracle Commerce where a single source energy array could do it? After Meng Yingying invented the canned food, Miracle Commerce built several dozen factories. These canned food factories originally required large amounts of source energy chefs to manually operate them, but now, the source energy array could be used to supply energy from the energy column, so they could be operated without human hands. Although there were no source energy chefs to control the fire, so the taste of the source energy food was not as good, it was only relatively speaking. Chu Tian did not care about the fox girl's complaints at all. This was because he had just brought Dolores with him to slaughter the minotaurs. Because of the long period of famine, the Minotaur tribe's stockpile of precious herbs and rare materials had already been exchanged for items, but the tribe still had many treasures, especially beast cores, magic crystals, leather, and etc. These were all accumulated by the Minotaur tribe over the years. These things were not worth much here. But as long as it could be sent to southern Xia, it would be of great value. The level 3 magic beast hides were enough to create top-notch leather armors. The magic cores and magic crystals could be used in large quantities in the laboratory. In addition, there were medicinal herbs, metals, and other materials. He did some rough calculations. The canned food was worth 300 low-grade source stones, which was around 300 million gold coins in the southern summer country. This was because most of the ingredients had been bought in the forest over the past month and were mostly level 2 ingredients, so the cost was relatively high. After all, with the Minotaur tribe's strength, level 1 source energy food could not satisfy them. Chu Tian had basically emptied the Minotaur tribe. The total value of these things was around 3,000 low-grade source stones, which was equivalent to 3 billion southern summer crystal coins. Chu Tian basically didn't do anything. Oldman's small town and Miracle Commerce were buying demon beast meat at high prices. The kingdom's mercenaries, hunters, and locals were naturally grateful to Miracle Commerce. After all, even the demon beast meat could be sold for a good price, which was a large amount of income for them. The purchased food was sent to the southern Xia factory to be processed before being sold to the famine areas, instantly earning 10 times the profit. Moreover, the locals were also grateful to him. Chu Tian was simply an angel that fell from the sky, saving their tribe from disaster. It was rare to see such a profitable business that could earn gratitude at the same time. Now that the fox girl Dolores had thrown away her prejudice against Chu Tian, she was already a bit impressed by this human. Although Chu Tian did not tell her how to transport the food, Dolores couldn't take the initiative to ask him, so she went to find the little fox. How could the little fox keep this secret? The Fox clan had already treated it like an ancestor and worshipped it in the temple, making this fellow very proud. Dolores only gave it a little benefit and it immediately told Dolores about the space warehouse. This space transport technology could not be compared to a miracle at all. Especially in times of famine for many tribes, Chu Tian could definitely use this method to earn a large amount of money. Dolores did not say another word as she led her tribe to fight Chu Tian. At this time, the Minotaur chief Arnold was already completely drunk. He had never thought that he would be this happy today. That human merchant had not only given the Minotaurs a pleasant surprise, temporarily relieving the famine in their tribe, he had also allowed them to enjoy delicious food that they would never be able to enjoy in their entire lives. The wine was a top-grade wine. The meat was a top-grade meat. Arnold felt a burst of sorrow. He felt like he had lived these past few decades in vain. He didn't even know what it meant to enjoy life. If he knew that the human world was this beautiful, he wouldn't have become a chief and would have left the forest to enjoy himself in a human country. This third true spirit layer Minotaur, whether it was a large or small country, he would have been respected. It was already too late to regret it now. What Arnold was truly surprised about was that the things the human merchant took were things the Minotaurs couldn't use. For example, demon beast essence bones, blood essence, beast cores, demon crystals, and leather. These things couldn't be eaten and weren't worth much in the forest, so the Minotaurs were too lazy to bring them back. He never thought that they could be used to save their tribe at this time. If they knew this earlier, they would have stored more. Arnold suddenly sobered up a bit. That's right. The Minotaurs were not rich to begin with and most of their stores had been traded. Although they had traded for several 100,000 jin of food, how many days could this last for? It was unknown how long this famine would last. If the tribe faced a food crisis, how would they survive it? Arnold's brows drew together without eyebrows. Although the Minotaurs were not smart, it was not hard to foresee this problem. Arnold carefully considered it before finally looking for Chu Tian and saying, "Respected Mr. Chu Tian, you have solved a large problem for the Minotaurs. I thank you on behalf of the Minotaurs." Chu Tian waved his hand in an uncaring manner. "Don't say it like this, I am a merchant. This is a fair trade, you don't owe me anything." Arnold's large black face was a bit awkward. The quality of the food this time is very good. I think it can last the Minotaurs for around 5 days, but after 5 days. Chu Tian pretended not to understand Arnold's words. "Our company has plenty of food. As long as the price is good, we can supply as much as we want." But Arnold released 2 streams of white gas from his nose as he anxiously said, "Our tribe's precious treasures and elixirs have been traded for food in Green City half a month ago. Most of the worthless leather and ores have been used to trade for food. Our tribe can't take out any more. I think we can owe it for now. As long as the tribe can guarantee a month's supply, the Minotaurs can guarantee double the payment in half a year." Chu Tian shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Chief Arnold should know that I won't be able to earn anything from this business. Think about it, how hard is it to send this large amount of food into the forest? If I didn't want to make friends with the Minotaurs, I wouldn't do this kind of losing business. If the Minotaurs want to owe it, I'm afraid it's a bit unreasonable. The company has to consider costs and risks. I am a merchant, so I'm very sorry." The Minotaurs were anxious hearing this. They did not know how long this famine would last. If this human merchant lost confidence in the Minotaurs, it would be a heavy blow to the Minotaurs. It was as he said, wanting to send this much food into the depths of the forest, just thinking about it was an incredible matter. Not to mention that the resources Chu Tian had traded for did not have any precious treasures or resources, just some common materials. Such high-quality food was traded for such a low price, perhaps it was even cheaper than in Green City. It seemed like there really wasn't anything to earn from this. What should he do? Steal it? No. Arnold did not even know the human merchant's background, not to mention the human caravans that came here to do business were not simple. Chu Tian had warned the Minotaurs that if they did anything out of line, the humans could use the food to support the surrounding tribes and have them attack the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs would not be able to bear the consequences. "We can consider any conditions. As long as it can help our clansmen pass this crisis, you can raise any conditions." "Really?" Arnold sincerely nodded. Chu Tian also nodded in satisfaction. Actually, I have a special identity, but it's not the right time to tell you. However, you should understand that you won't suffer a loss if you follow me. The Minotaurs knit their brows without eyebrows again. What did he mean? Could it be he wanted the Minotaurs to be loyal to him? This was also impossible. He was only a human and the Minotaurs would not bow down to him for food. Chief Arnold, I'll allow the Minotaurs to owe it to you. Chu Tian said this and then suddenly squatted down. As for the other part, we can hire you to pay for it. Hire? I'm not a local after all, so doing things here is a hindrance. If I have the help of the Minotaurs, there will be much less resistance when I start my business. Chu Tian said this and pointed at the large cans of food on the side. Each Minotaur will get 2 cans of food a day. What do you think? There were several dozen jeans of food in a single can, enough for a Minotaur to eat for several days. 1 Minotaur would get 2 cans of food. This was not low in a time of famine. A single Minotaur could feed his entire family. Only Arnold was still worried. He did not know the background of this human, and if he led the Minotaurs to their deaths, he would not be able to explain it to his clansmen. You don't need to worry. Chu Tian then added, if the Minotaurs are heavily injured during the hiring, we will be responsible for healing them and giving them 10 cans of food so they can peacefully recover. If the Minotaurs die during the hiring, Miracle Commerce will give them 100 cans of food. The Minotaur's breathing became heavy. This was a temptation that was hard to resist. Chief Arnold thought about it for a long time before saying in a probing voice, the Minotaurs are the bravest warriors in the forest, we need at least 4 cans of food a day. Chu Tian thought about it and did not bargain, so he agreed. 5 cans of food would give them several 100 pounds of meat. Buying a random bull's corpse would give them close to a ton of meat, so what did this bit of food count for? Miracle Commerce did not lack resources, but what they lacked the most was allies, especially allies in Green City. Using food to maintain allies was a pretty good method. No problem. Other than the Fox clan, Chu Tian had obtained the support of another tribe. These Minotaurs would not only support Chu Tian could even hire Minotaurs to charge into battle. Therefore, as long as there was a need, Chu Tian could hire several thousand Minotaurs to fight for him. With the help of this power and the Fox clan, Chu Tian was much more confident. But this was not enough. Chu Tian had not fully displayed his advantages, he still needed to win over the support of the locals. Chapter 406. Chu Tian and Arnold finished discussing the details of their cooperation. The main thing was the amount of food, the time limit for the Minotaurs to repay the loan, as well as the interest. All of the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley were grateful to Chu Tian. This human was simply a savior from the heavens. The most important thing was the food this human sent was too good. Just like Chu Tian had said, after eating Miracle Commerce's food, the Minotaurs couldn't eat anything else. Chu Tian announced that the Fox clan would become the local representative of Miracle Commerce. Things like sending food to the Minotaur's Valley would all be handled by the Fox clan humans, so Chu Tian would not easily come out. The Minotaur's battle strength does not lose to the ogres. You can obtain the support of the Minotaurs, this will be beneficial to you in the future. A hint of praise and emotion flashed in Dolores's eyes, as well as a trace of satisfaction. The Fox people had endured these stupid cows for a long time and now the stupid cows had to listen to the Fox people, which made her feel much better, but the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley are only working with you because of the threat of famine. This doesn't mean they are willing to sell their lives for you. As long as the famine situation is alleviated, I think your control over them will quickly decrease. Dolores then said, what you're doing right now is a risky investment. Who knows if the Minotaurs will repay the resources? Unless you become the city lord and make this debt real, everything you've invested will be for naught. Chu Tian nodded, then what do you think we should do? We can secretly hunt the Minotaur's Valley or use Sir Demonic God's abilities to take away the demon beasts, making the Minotaurs eat less and less. This way, we can maintain our dependence on Miracle Commerce. But Dolores's charming voice changed. Doing this will be very strenuous and there will be a gap if we're discovered, making things worse. Also, a single Minotaur's tribe won't be of much help to you. This beautiful fox girl could already stand in Chu Tian's perspective to think of problems. Chu Tian was very satisfied. The Fox clan had clearly tied their benefits to miracle commerce. A single Minotaur is far from enough, so I need the support of more tribes. Chu Tian calmly said, if I had 10 or 20 tribes supporting me, wouldn't it be much easier to sit in the city lord's position? A look of surprise flashed in Dolores's eyes. If you can get the collective support of so many local tribes, it's naturally not a problem. The problem is, how can you do it? This is definitely not an easy task. It's simple. A good move can be used twice. Chu Tian was now inspired by the Minotaur tribe. Survival was the most important rule for the forest locals. There was a large-scale famine near Green City and several tribes were struggling like the Minotaur Valley. Even if the other tribes were in a better situation, they were still struggling. In this period of time, controlling the food would mean controlling the natives. Chu Tian did not recommend any risky investments. As long as he could obtain the support of the natives, even if it was only temporary support, he would be able to stabilize his position as the city lord. At that time, the natives would have no choice but to submit to him, and all the debts he owed would be confirmed. I'll need your help with this matter. With our current relationship, Sir City Lord's matter is our matter. To be able to help Sir City Lord, of course it is our honor. Dolores smiled beautifully. When her plump body trembled, Chu Tian couldn't help but take another look. However, Dolores didn't care at all. Instead, she threw him a coquettish look and said, it's just that the scale of our demonic saint church is very small. Everyone's life is very happy. That voice seemed like it could drip water. The charm of the Fox clan's great beauty was like 100 barrels of honey poured into a pond. It was enough to melt the bones of any human man. This was asking for benefits. The Fox clan naturally followed benefits, they would not work for free. What are you in a rush for? Since I said I would make you rich, of course I won't go back on my words. Why don't you ask yourself, when have I, Chu Tian, ever mistreated anyone? Chu Tian heroically patted the fox girl's shoulder. You can be assured that I will give 1/10 of the profits from the forest to your demonic saint religion. Including the debts of the Minotaurs and the others, when these debts become real, they will all be given a share. 1/10? Stingy. Dolores's misty eyes were filled with a glow of joy. Under Chu Tian's exploitation methods, the local tribes would have to pay back their old debts. Even if they gave 1/10 of the profits to the Fox clan, it would still be a considerable amount. The Fox clan did not put in any effort at all, they were only acting as intermediaries and agents, so these benefits were basically free. Especially the debts, this was not just debts, it was simply usury. If the famine became longer and the locals owed more and more money, the Fox clan would be able to lie down and earn large amounts of money. Dolores's attitude towards Chu Tian clearly became better. Sir City Lord, what can I help you with? I need information. I need information on all the locals that Green City can rope in, as well as the hunting areas of the locals. Chu Tian felt goosebumps rise on his skin when he heard the fox girl's bone-melting voice. Also, I want all the priests to help me make a batch of things. The hunting areas were the resources that the locals relied on to survive. The forest locals had a 100% hunting culture, so they did not know how to farm or fish. The hunting areas were the only source of food for the tribe. A large tribe's hunting area was at most 200 miles wide. Chu Tian wanted to completely cut off the locals' limited source of food. With the Fox clan's information and Chu Tian's methods, this matter was completely possible. In the future, when the army or mercenaries camped in the wilderness, there would be a beast-repelling source energy array used to defend against demon beasts. This beast-repelling source energy array was similar to the beast-luring array. The beast-luring array used auras, pheromones, sounds, and smells to lure in demon beasts, but the beast-repelling array was the opposite. it was used to chase away demon beasts. Chu Tian brought Dolores and the several dozen Fox Clan priests to help. These Fox Clan's battle strength was not high, but they were all genuine true spirit cultivators. Moreover, the Fox Clan had studied source energy arrays, so they only used 2 days to make 200 level 3 Earth Dragon Beast repelling talismans. The Earth Dragon repelling talisman simulated the aura of the Earth Dragon Beast. The Earth Dragon Beast was a very strong demon beast. It could hunt down demon beasts that were level 3 and it did not have any natural enemies at the same level. This talisman was not remarkable, normal people could not sense its existence. However, wild beasts and magical beasts could sense this faint aura. When the beast-repelling talisman was placed in the hunting area of the aboriginal tribe, the effect of each talisman could cover dozens of miles. All magical beasts would immediately flee when they sensed the Earth Dragon and would not linger in the vicinity. Chu Tian was certain that in just 3-5 days, the locals would fall into chaos. Those who were famished would be even more famished, even those who weren't famished would be anxious. At this time, Chu Tian would have the Fox Clan spread the news in the forest, saying that there was a human company in the forest that could buy large amounts of food at a low price. The reactions of the locals could be imagined without even needing to guess. Chu Tian would use the same trick, using food as a condition to control them. Chu Tian was just one person and the Fox Clan was just a proxy, so the locals had no choice but to accept him. Once Chu Tian stopped providing food, they would have no other choice. Therefore, in order to survive, they would most likely choose to compromise. This plan was very simple, but it couldn't be denied that it was a very practical plan. With the effects of the beast-repelling talisman and the spatial transportation ability, Chu Tian could completely control the lives of these locals. In the end, not only would they be eaten by Chu Tian, they would also owe him a large amount of money and they would have to be grateful to him in the end. This was truly too sinister. Dolores completely admired Chu Tian. This mysterious man was very attractive, he seemed to always be able to do incredible things. Even the things he casually took out, like the most ordinary beast-repelling talisman, would be good things that had a market among the locals. Such a small talisman, how many tribes would be able to avoid demon beasts? Not to mention the mysterious space warehouse. We'll send the talismans to the hunting areas of the tribes and now we'll wait for them to show their effects, making the tribes fall into chaos. Dolores looked a bit tired after running around for several days, but she was still full of energy. Her eyes were filled with expectation, but there was also a trace of worry. We'll be targeting 9 tribes at the same time this time, with this many tribes adding up to 1 million people, will you be fine on your side? Dolores was very clear. If Chu Tian messed it up, he would just leave. Those starving locals had nowhere else to go, so they would either fall apart, causing their tribes to collapse. From then on, a large group of wandering forest robbers would appear in the forest, or they would wildly attack other tribes to plunder their resources. It would be hard for the Fox Clan tribe to survive alone in this area. Providing for 1 million people by themselves. I'm afraid that's not an easy task. It was normal for Dolores to have this kind of worry. This was a bit strenuous for Chu Tian. Although he had the full support of Southern Xia, the food that normal people ate was not suitable for these strong forest locals. Therefore, Chu Tian had to prepare source energy food and it had to be source energy food. Level 2 source energy food took up a large portion and even with Miracle Commerce's production, this was still a large burden. But the young miss had already made preparations, so she had prepared large amounts of food in advance, so maintaining this for a while shouldn't be a problem. Chu Tian confidently said to Dolores, you can be assured. If you do this with me, the Fox Clan's days of becoming rich will be right in front of you. Dolores was a bit excited as she cupped her hands, thank you Sir City Lord. The Fox Clan was the easiest to bribe. As long as there was profit to be made, the Fox Clan would follow you with all their hearts. Chu Tian was very clear on this point, so he sincerely said to the Fox Clan beauty, to be honest, I've been lacking people like you by my side. Although we don't have much contact with humans, we still understand what kind of personalities humans have, right? Dolores's eyes had a trace of charm. If Sir City Lord needs it, our Fox Clan's young girls are very passionate. Humans always drooled over coquettish Fox Clan women, but Chu Tian clearly did not mean this. Dolores also knew that this was not what he meant, but she had to twist it like this, making it seem like it was very ambiguous. If it was a normal man, they would definitely be tempted. This fox spirit. Chu Tian pretended to be a fool as he gave a laugh. The Fox Clan is very smart and capable, having a keen sense of profit. With a bit of training, they will be natural merchants. We'll do a big job in this forest, and what you will have in the future, it will definitely surpass your current imagination. Miracle Commerce was becoming bigger and bigger. Even if the young miss was outstanding, it would be hard for her to take care of everything. Miracle Commerce needed a group of smart and reliable people to help, and the Fox Clan was very suitable for Miracle Commerce. But because the Fox Clan valued profit, if you could bribe them, others could bribe them too. This was a race that could not be completely assured. But coincidentally, the Fox Clan in front of them were different. They believed in the demonic god religion, and the little fox had become their highest spiritual leader. Even if the little fox didn't listen, it was still connected to Chu Tian. Without Chu Tian, it wouldn't exist. Unless they abandoned their faith, they wouldn't betray them. Faith was a kind of spiritual binding power, not to mention that their cultivation technique was related to their faith. If they abandoned the demonic god religion, they would lose all their cultivation techniques. The Fox Clan was very smart. They should understand the gains and losses. When Miracle Commerce had this group of smart Fox Clan members, whether it was research or business, it would definitely be a large help. Now that everything had been arranged, let's see how the forest reacts. Chapter 407. Chu Tian's plan was progressing smoothly, at least it was very smooth at the beginning. The beast-repelling talismans made by Chu Tian were very effective, driving away most of the prey in the native hunting area. This caused the number of demon beasts to decrease, not to mention their daily harvest. It was not even a fifth of what it was a few days ago. This was simply adding insult to injury. Now even the tribes that lacked food were worried seeing this situation. Those tribes that were already starving were like ants on a hot pan at this moment. The large tribes began to study it. There had to be some kind of geological change in the forest. It could be a natural energy fluctuation, a change in the spirit vein, or a natural disaster. Of course, it could also be a man-made disaster. In short, there were fewer prey. Living in the forest of chaos, it wasn't good to have too many demon beasts around. It could easily threaten the tribe's safety. Moreover, in areas with a high density of demon beasts, high-level demon beasts would appear, but it wasn't good to have too few demon beasts either. The locals relied on hunting, and the forest environment was not suitable for farming. The current situation was very dangerous, and they didn't know how long it would last. There were already several tribes that couldn't hold on any longer. Move away. This was not a small matter. This was not something that could be decided on a whim. The forest of chaos was filled with dangers, especially in the depths of the forest. There were all kinds of powerful demon beasts, as well as many low-key but dangerous tribes. There were also many fierce forest bandits, and all kinds of dangers were hard to predict. Who didn't want to live a stable life? Who wanted to step on an unknown and dangerous path? Moreover, even if they moved away, they still had to make preparations. They would need to spend at least 10-15 days exploring their new living environment and prepare rations for the journey. If they did this, the tribes would have died long ago. Since things had reached this point, there was only one method: steal. In this savage land, using force was always the best way to solve problems, and it was the basic way to survive. If there was no food, they would steal food, and if there were no resources, they would steal resources. This was the natural law of the forest, which was why the dark forest law was so prevalent. When two tribes were together, the other side wouldn't move against you, but that didn't mean they wouldn't move against you. If there was a famine or other reasons, two tribes that had a good relationship with each other would instantly fight. Those who didn't have food would snatch food, while those who had food would be wary of suspicion, or perhaps they would take advantage of the situation and attack the other party first to prevent future troubles. In short, this matter had already become a tradition in the Forest of Chaos. At this moment, the entire forest was filled with the sound of knives being sharpened. It was as if a barrel of gunpowder was about to explode. An unprecedented war was about to break out. Chu Tian's plan could be said to be relatively successful up to this point. However, before the second step could be implemented, an unexpected change occurred. Hu Shaolin was a large fox tribe to the southeast of Green City, with a total population of around 200,000 people. They had lived here for 43 years, so they could be considered an old tribe. The Tiger tribe warriors raised their weapons and roared. The native tribe had already begun to gather their troops. The Tiger tribe's chieftain decided to personally lead 30,000 elite warriors to launch a sneak attack on the nearby Lizard tribe. The Lizard tribe lived in the wetlands, so they had a habit of storing food. As long as they eliminated them, the tribe's urgent need would be resolved. When the Tiger clan people were busy gathering their troops, a strange figure appeared at the gate of the Tiger clan. This was a Goat clan spirit beast with an ugly old face. He was wearing a large robe and his hands and neck were covered in bone ornaments. He also held a long staff in his hand, making him look very strange. "Who are you? You actually dare charge into the Tiger clan?" Before he even finished speaking, the Goat tribe waved his hand and several Tiger clan men fell to the ground, spitting out white foam and twitching. No one knew what they had done. This Goat tribe person swaggered into the Tiger clan's tribe, but since he charged in like this, he naturally attracted the attention of many people and was immediately surrounded. The Tiger clan chief walked out and coldly looked over. "Shaman sorcerer? What are you doing here?" The shaman sorcerer gave a laugh. "I'm here to show the chief the way." "Show the way? What way?" "The Tiger clan wants food, so attacking our neighbors is not a good idea. How we do things is not up to you swindlers to tell us what to do. Why don't you look further ahead?" The shaman sorcerer ignored him and suddenly said, "Green City has stored food for several decades, so why can those gnomes live in the city and have large amounts of food while you guys can only hide in the forest? I say that you should directly attack Green City and take it. If you occupy Green City, not to mention a temporary problem, you won't have to worry about food for 3-5 years. The Tiger clan chief's face fell. "What did you say?" The ogres, lizard men, snake clan, and the southern tribes have all come to an agreement and are prepared to attack Green City together to steal food. The shaman sorcerer said this before turning around. The gnomes and the green religion have completely declined in the past few decades, so this is the best time. As for whether the Tiger clan wants to join in, that will depend on the chief's decision. Green City's acting city lord, the gnome Clark, always had a worried frown on his face. The gnomes were related to the elves, but they were not a mix of elves and other races. The gnomes were an independent race, a branch of the elves in the ancient times, belonging to the lesser elves. It was like the relationship between the halflings and humans. Their bloodlines were very similar, but they had already evolved into two different races. The gnomes were around the same height as the dwarves and their other characteristics were similar to the elves. The gnomes had very smart minds and liked to study knowledge, studying profound source energy arrays. Although they loved nature and didn't like fighting like the elves, they were not as inflexible as the elves. The gnomes had a very good strength in the forest. When the gnomes in this area were at their peak, there were several million of them and they were divided into several dozen tribes. Although they were all independent, they had a common belief, which was the green religion. The city the gnomes spent 500 years to build was this green city. The gnomes had decent strength, but compared to the true giants of the forest, they were still lacking. Those giants didn't want to touch the other side's sensitive nerves, so they didn't directly take Green City. They just thought of ways to slowly nibble away at it. The Lich from the Dragon's Ridge brought the undead religion. The spirit beasts from the savage highlands brought the shaman religion. The druids who didn't like fighting were also inexplicably drawn in. After several decades of fighting, the strongest green religion had already been destroyed. When the gnomes felt that they could no longer control this city, the Eternal Forest's elven king threw out an olive branch to the gnomes, willing to accept these close relatives. Clark and the gnome elder didn't even think about it before agreeing. The gnomes did not build Green City to fight for fame, rather they built a home for the gnomes to peacefully study in. Who would have thought that after this home became rich, it would attract so many greedy eyes? Compared to the Dragon's Ridge and the Savage Highlands, joining the Eternal Forest was the best result for the gnomes. The Eternal Forest's elves were close relatives to the gnomes and the elves were gentle and kind, so they wouldn't make it hard for the gnomes. The Elven King even promised that the gnomes could continue to study and live in Green City, no different from before. The gnomes had no desire for power and wealth. It didn't matter who was the master of the city, it was fine as long as the gnomes weren't chased away. Clark was very happy to complete the agreement with the Elven King. The Eternal Forest had already announced that Green City would be under their protection. The gnomes were filled with anticipation as they waited. As long as the Eternal Forest stationed a strong elven army in Green City and sent a person with enough prestige to become the Green City Lord, would the shaman religion and the undead religion still be this arrogant? Even if they had the Dragon's Ridge or the Savage Highlands behind them, the Eternal Forest had already taken the initiative in Green City. After so many days, there was no news from the Eternal Forest at all. Not long after, a secret letter was sent into Clark's hands. When Clark opened the Elven King's personal letter, he almost jumped into the ceiling. Green City's position was too special and there were many large influences involved, so it was easy to cause disputes. So the Elven Council did not agree, which meant there was no hope for the Elven army. But the kind Elven King had given Green City a city lord. Clark was disappointed, but he thought that the gnomes still had a bit of strength. If the elves could send several peak experts here, even without the Elven army, they would be able to deter thieves. Who would have thought that the Elven King would give Green City's city lord to a human he had never heard of before? Weak. No fame. And a human. Clark was so angry that he almost fainted. There were no human powers in the Forest of Chaos and all the humans that came here were outsiders. Outsiders meant that they had no foundation here. A human without any foundation coming to this complicated Green City to be the city lord, wasn't it child's play? Even if the gnomes obeyed, would the other races obey? When Clark was anxiously thinking of a solution, a gnome suddenly ran over, acting City Lord Clark, something has appeared in the forest again. What? There were quite a few things that had happened in the forest recently. Famine, plague, and various disasters. Although there was no direct evidence, Clark believed that these were all done by those fellows. They just wanted to create chaos, giving the Eternal Forest's influence more resistance. This gnome adjutant was covered in sweat as he said, "There are several tribes that have formed an alliance because of food, preparing to attack Green City." What? Clark felt his head grow bigger. These tribes actually wanted to attack Green City. Green City had 1.5 million residents and the gnome population had decreased in the last few decades. This was a gnome city and there weren't many gnomes left, but there were still around 600,000 that occupied a small half. The gnomes were good at handling and storing food. Green City had developed for so many years, so their food reserves were very rich. In normal situations, the locals would plunder from each other, so no one dared to attack Green City. This was because even if the green religion was weak, they were not something the locals could provoke. Who would have thought that they would form an alliance to attack Green City this time? This was simply madness. There were several tribes that had over 1 million people. Even if each tribe sent 30-50,000 people, it would still be a shocking number. Even if they couldn't attack Green City, they would still cause large losses to Green City. Clark could already smell an unusual aura behind this matter. If Green City was destroyed and occupied by the locals, the Eternal Forest would not be able to take over the city. At least it was like this from a certain person's point of view. This matter was very likely to be a plot instigated by the enemy. Chapter 408. Chu Tian had made a mistake. It couldn't be considered a mistake, the plan itself was not a problem. First they would cut off the food of the large tribes, and when they were begging for a miracle, the Fox clan would release the news of the mysterious human merchant. When these natives heard that the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley, because they traded with this human merchant, not only did nothing happen to them during the famine, but they even ate and drank well every day, they would definitely go to the Minotaur Valley outside to investigate the situation. Who didn't know that the Minotaurs were the stupidest and were the first to starve to death? Now that they were eating and drinking, how could the other tribes not be jealous? The human merchant was very resourceful, so no matter how much food they needed, they would be able to supply it all. On one hand, they could supply high-quality food, and on the other hand, they could cut off other sources of food. These locals would be tightly bound by Chu Tian in the end, and Chu Tian's goal would be achieved. The problem now was that when Chu Tian had just started the first step of his plan, and before he could even start the second step, Dolores had already rushed over. There was a very urgent piece of news that several tribes were working together to attack Green City. This situation isn't good. Dolores said with a face of worry, it's like we've smashed our own feet with a rock. No, this isn't right. Chu Tian knit his brows and thought about it for a few minutes, this shouldn't be right. These tribes normally don't interact with each other and are suspicious of each other, how could they form an alliance in just 2-3 days? This definitely doesn't make sense. Dolores had already noticed this point, although Green City's gnomes are very weak, they are not something these normal tribes dare challenge. I also suspect that there is a mastermind behind this. Chu Tian nodded. There was no need to doubt this was certain. Chu Tian had already been in the Fox clan for a week, and he already had a good understanding of Green City. This city's manager and founder were all gnomes. Although the half-elves weren't as powerful as the elves, they could be said to be one of the most knowledgeable races in the forest. The gnomes were different from the wood elves, who had no desires. The gnomes were strict by nature and had a strong thirst for knowledge, so the gnomes had high attainments in source energy arrays. They had high standards in alchemy and talisman making. The reason Green City could maintain its rich state for several hundred years was because the gnomes' production had brought enough wealth to the city. The gnomes' equipment could be said to be very elite. Adding in the gnomes' talismans and traps, as well as various defensive facilities, it would make Green City a hard-to-attack city. If my guesses aren't wrong, the person behind this is most likely still in Green City. These locals can't take down Green City, they can only work together. Chu Tian asked Dolores, with your intuition, who do you think is the most suspicious? Dolores didn't even think before saying, shamanism or necromancy. Chu Tian said with a slight nod, we need to go to Green City. Why are you going to Green City? Of course it's to see the acting city lord. Chu Tian was an outsider, and it was hard for an outsider to enter Green City, so he needed the Fox clan's help. Dolores and Chu Tian shared the same interests, so of course she agreed without even thinking about it. The demonic god religion had a bit of influence in Green City. Although the Fox clan was small, the Fox people had good brains, so they had a few stores in the city that mainly sold materials. Chu Tian disguised himself as a Fox person and was led by Dolores, so it was much easier for them to enter Green City. Green City had already been established for 500 years. This was not considered too old in the Forest of Chaos, and this city had always been under the control of the Green religion. The Green religion was a religion of the elves, mainly believing in the forest god. The gnomes at their peak had over 1 million people, so they could be considered a large influence. In the last few decades, the Green religion had quickly declined. The newly risen druid warriors, necromancers, and shaman sorcerers ran amok in Green City. They were already a serious threat to the gnomes. Although the gnomes were still the masters of Green City in name, they had already been divided. They were hindered by these 3 religions, and adding in the several decades of chaos, the influence of the Green religion quickly declined. Chu Tian was currently standing in front of Green City. This is Green City? It really is a bit different from what I imagined. The cities in the Forest of Chaos were not something Southern Xia could compare to. Even the southern summer imperial city could not compare to a tenth of this place. When Chu Tian saw Green City, his first impression was, it was grand, natural, and picturesque. Most of the cities in the Forest of Chaos did not have city walls, and the city walls did not have much meaning in defense. Although the Green City in front of him did not have city walls, because it was built in the middle of a mountain range, the mountain range surrounding it was a natural city wall. If he hadn't personally seen it, it would be hard to imagine that a city would suddenly appear in the middle of a mountain range. Green City did not have a lot of people, but the area it covered was several times larger than Southern Xia's imperial city. The entire city was scattered in the middle of the mountain range, so the distribution was very interesting. If one looked at it from a macro perspective, it was like a trapezoid shape. Large amounts of castles were scattered, some were built at the foot of the mountain, some were built halfway up the mountain, and some were built at the top of the mountain. Sometimes there were two castles in the middle, separated by a several 100-meter deep mountain stream that was only connected by a drawbridge. There were countless open areas in the middle of the mountain range, which were large amounts of planting and breeding areas. There was a main peak in the middle of the mountain range. It was originally a towering mountain, but the top half of it had been excavated and turned into a giant white castle. Half was a mountain and the other half was a city. Sitting at the peak of the mountain range, surrounded by clouds, it was like a city in the sky. This was a very special place. The cities built by the gnomes were completely different from the cities built by humans. In the large cities that humans lived in, the streets were orderly and the tall buildings were arranged in picturesque disorder. They were tightly packed together and were surrounded by city walls in an area. Green City's appearance was completely different. The entire city was made up of over 100 large and small castles, and each castle could be considered a small city. The castles surrounded the mountain range in layers, forming a trapezoid shape. Although they were very scattered, they were still very orderly. If a human city was a flat surface structure, then this city would be a three-dimensional structure. The entire Green City was perfectly integrated with nature. These cities that were carved out of the mountain or built out of thin air looked disorderly on the surface, but each building in Green City was very unique. The spiritual energy here was very rich, and there were countless spirit veins gathered here, giving birth to countless heaven and earth treasures, but there were no fierce beasts. This was very rare in the Forest of Chaos. In this endless mountain range, it was unknown how many precious or veins were hidden. It was definitely a good place for long-term development. Ha, ha, ha. Chu Tian gave a few loud laughs. There is a city in the mountains, there is a mountain in the city, the forest surrounds the river surrounds the mountains, and the mountain surrounds the city. My city looks very good. But I see that the city has not even been developed by 10% and the entire mountain range has not even been developed by 2%. I'm prepared to connect all of this together and create a large city-state that can hold several tens of millions of people, making it the largest city in the Forest of Chaos. What do you think? Sir City Lord, it seems like you're happy too early. Dolores rolled her eyes, disagreeing with Chu Tian's grand ambitions. Don't forget, your city will be captured by a group of people and it might turn to ashes in a few days. Those locals. Pay. When would Uncle Chu Tian place them in his eyes? But speaking of this city was indeed better than imagined. The city the gnomes used 500 years to build had been taken advantage of by Chu Tian in the end. Not only was this place rich in spiritual energy, it was also in the center of the Forest of Chaos, making it the most suitable base for miracle commerce. If Chu Tian could gain a foothold in this place, he could use this place as the center and allow the company to expand. At that time, the Dragon's Ridge, the Titan Mountain Range, the Savage Highlands, the Eternal Forest, or the distant Western Sea or the dark underground world, would Chu Tian be able to properly deal with them? The Forest of Chaos had the potential to become an empire. Of course, the premise was to unify this area, which was not an easy matter. Let's enter the city. Green City did not just have a natural mountain barrier, there were also many natural passages that could be used to enter Green City from all directions. Dolores led Chu Tian through a passage covered in white moonlight stones. Not only were there shrubs and green grass on both sides, there were also many tall trees. What surprised Chu Tian the most was that there was a type of large tree that had grown into the shape of a human. It had thick arms and a huge spear in its hands. It was like a 10-meter-tall giant guard that stood motionlessly in the passageway. What is this? Chu Tian was a bit surprised. This thing looked like a tree ant, but it was definitely not a tree ant because Chu Tian could feel that this thing did not have a will and was a giant puppet life form. This is the Green Protector. Dolores explained. The Green religion studied the remains of the ancient war trees and finally cultivated a powerful life form. 100 years ago, Green City was filled with these powerful warriors, but after being attacked several times, they were all lost. In the last 10 years, there have been several disasters and a large number of them have died, so there aren't many left. Chu Tian continued walking with Dolores. There were at least 3 layers of barriers protecting this canyon. There was a reason why Green City could stand in this place. With these green protectors and the defenses in the passage, Green City could stop large forest powers from invading. As long as it wasn't a giant like the Eternal Forest, Green City could easily protect itself. Of course, that was for the previous Green City. The current Green City was very weak and there were many problems both inside and outside, so it was very bad. If it wasn't like this, why would the gnomes surrender to the Eternal Forest? The Elven Council was really a group of rotten heads, actually not wanting a good place that was delivered to their door. In the end, Chu Tian had picked up a large bargain. Chapter 409. The gnomes were not xenophobic like the elves, they were a relatively tolerant race. As long as one could have a good relationship with the gnomes, no matter what race or religion they were from, they were all qualified to have a place in Green City. Foreign merchants could also temporarily stay in Green City. This open policy made Green City prosper, but it also brought a series of troubles to Green City. The reason why those cults could quickly develop in Green City and even threaten the gnomes' rule, other than the power behind the church supporting them in secret, was because it was too easy for them to infiltrate. There were several shaman altars in Green City and a large-scale shaman temple. The shaman religion mainly focused on spirit beasts and had developed very quickly in Green City over the past few decades. Now their influence at the grassroots level was even faintly surpassing the Green religion. Acting City Lord Clark anxiously paced back and forth. The surrounding tribes were preparing to attack Green City, which made him feel pressured. Therefore, he sent out a group of envoys early in the morning, hoping they could resolve this problem. After all, with Green City's current weakness, it was clear they couldn't take any more trouble. The negotiation this time was entirely about stability. Green City was very sincere. But, why hadn't the envoy returned yet? While Clark was feeling a bit uneasy. Sir Acting City Lord. An assistant quickly charged in. The envoy, the envoy. The envoy has been killed and the bandits have gathered. What did you say? Clark angrily slapped the table. These damn fellows, getting an inch and wanting a foot, their greed knows no bounds. Do they really think Green City is afraid of a mob like them? This assistant was very flustered. I think they are about to attack, we should deal with them as soon as possible. The gnomes were not a martial race, so there weren't many warriors in the tribe. The Green Protectors had suffered a lot in the past few decades and this wave of locals would cause a large amount of damage to Green City. Of course, this was not what the Acting City Lord was most worried about. What he was most worried about was the mastermind behind this plot. Plagues, famine, and riots, it was always wave after wave. When had the forest been peaceful during this period of time? Clark had always been suspicious of the identity of the mastermind behind this matter. After all, famine was one of the main causes of war and when the locals were in danger, they took the chance to stir up chaos. This was not hard to explain. Clark powerlessly waved his hand. Have the clansmen prepare. Yes. If the Eternal Forest could accept Green City, he would not need to worry about these matters. Acting City Lord, there's someone outside requesting an audience. Clark didn't have the time to meet this person. Just as he was about to order them to leave, Clark's heart suddenly stirred. Who is it? I'm not sure. One is a human and the other is from the fox race. The fox race seems to be the priestess of the Church of the Devil God, Dolores. Humans? Invite them in. Clark seemed like he understood something and his brows knit together. Most of the gnomes didn't know the truth and thought that the Eternal Forest's army would arrive at Green City at any time. Only Clark and a few others knew about the Elven King's matter of a human city lord, but this matter couldn't be spread. There weren't many races on the continent that liked humans. The gnomes were no exception. Moreover, humans here were synonymous with outsiders, and outsiders meant that they were nothing in the local area. Even a powerful dragon would not be able to suppress a local snake, not to mention that the other party was at most a flying mouse. How was it possible for him to inform such a large group of snakes? Clark sent everyone away, and Chu Tian and Dolores walked in. Dolores politely gave a slight bow to the gnomes in front of her. Demonic god priest Dolores greets acting city lord Clark. Clark did not look at Dolores, but he looked at Chu Tian with a gaze filled with contempt. Humans had short lifespans and this person looked very young, perhaps not even 20 years old among humans. He was no different from a child. Even if the Elven King was irrational, he shouldn't have sent this kind of person to manage Green City, right? Clark said in a somewhat malicious voice, Green City does not welcome human travelers. What matter does Your Excellency and Priest Dolores have to come see me for? I'm very sorry, I'm not a traveler. Chu Tian did not have any thoughts of hiding it at all. He took out the Elven King's token and secret letter and placed it on the table. I am called Chu Tian, the Elven King has appointed me as Green City's city lord. You? Clark's eyes popped out. Someone like you can be Green City's city lord? I think the Elven King is confused. I'd rather surrender to the spirit beasts. These were not completely words of anger. Clark never would have thought that when he sincerely surrendered to the Eternal Forest would treat the gnomes like this. Letting a human who hadn't even grown hair be the city lord. This was simply an insult to Green City and an insult to the gnomes. Green City's situation was this complicated. What could this human do? Chu Tian saw the anger on the gnome's face and his heart was filled with helplessness. According to the original plan, Chu Tian was prepared to subdue a group of local tribes. After gathering the support of these locals, he would come to Green City to take over the city lord's position and move the entire miracle commerce over. Because there was a change in the plan and the locals wanted to attack Green City, Chu Tian had to change the order and come to Green City first. Why does acting city lord Clark think I can't be the city lord? Then what makes you think you can be the city lord? With my knowledge, my talent, and my mind, I can do things the gnomes can't. Chu Tian shamelessly said, if acting city lord Clark doesn't believe me, we can make a simple bet. Clark was stunned. How do you want to bet? Within a month, I will eradicate all of Green City's internal problems. Whether it is the shamans, necromancers, druids, or anything else. Chu Tian knew that he would be questioned if he was alone, so he could only brag to increase his reputation. If I can do it, the gnomes must recognize my abilities. If I can't do it, you don't need to feel awkward. I will go to the Eternal Forest and resign from the Elven King. Clark revealed a look of disbelief. Do you know what you're saying? Do you know what the shaman sorcerers and necromancers represent? It's just the savage highlands and the Dragon's Ridge. What is there to worry about? Clark carefully sized up the human in front of him. Although he didn't believe that this human could do it, judging from his calm expression and demeanor, he was indeed more mature than he had imagined. All right, I'll bet with you. This was a task that was almost impossible to complete. The gnomes were being pressured by these foreign powers, so they became weaker and weaker, having no choice but to rely on the Eternal Forest. If Chu Tian could really solve these problems for Green City, then why couldn't he be the city lord? Of course. This was a task that was impossible to complete. At this time, there were fierce shouts coming from outside the discussion hall. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. What is going on? Clark knit his brows and hesitated for 2 seconds. The envoy sent by Green City to negotiate with the tribes has been sent back after being killed. The clansmen are very excited and naturally protest, requesting to fight. I'm afraid this battle is hard to avoid. Chu Tian slightly raised his brows. I want to see the envoy's corpse. What do you want to do? Clark was a bit vigilant. This gnome envoy died for Green City, so he should be buried in the forest temple, returning to the embrace of the forest god. Chu Tian said, I just want to see the person who sacrificed himself for Green City. Perhaps I can find something from his body. That's natural. Clark's brows slightly relaxed. This foreign human actually knew the green religion's beliefs and traditions. Alright, but the priest will be holding the funeral soon, so I'll give you at most 10 minutes. That's enough. Dolores looked at Chu Tian with a bit of surprise. Why did this fellow want to see a corpse? Clark brought Chu Tian into the forest temple. This was a giant natural cave and the entire space was covered in tree roots. There was an altar in the center with an intact corpse lying on top of it. Chu Tian found that the corpse's neck was sewn together, so it should have been beheaded by someone. His eyes slightly narrowed as he said, What did you send him to discuss? Of course it was to discuss how to survive the famine. Clark's face filled with anger when he saw the envoy's corpse. The gnomes were even willing to open Green City's warehouse to borrow some food, but who would have thought that these damn fellows would be this greedy? Did they really think that Green City was something they could break through? Chu Tian shook his head. Perhaps the envoy did not say that. I'm guessing that after he went to the locals, he must have used strong words and even insulted them. In the end, he angered the locals and was killed. What nonsense are you saying? Acting City Lord Clark had a bit of good impression of this human, but it had completely disappeared at this moment. You dare question the gnome's strict faith? Chu Tian did not explain. His right hand suddenly released a faint light and he drew a rune on the gnome's forehead. Under the effect of this rune, the gnome's corpse began to violently tremble. Acting City Lord Clark was already filled with rage. What did you do? Chu Tian softly said, See for yourself. There was suddenly a sharp whistle that came from the gnome's ear. There was a disgusting bug that came out and Chu Tian casually pinched it in his hand. Dolores cried out in shock, This is the shaman sorcerer's witchcraft insect. This is something that can control one's mind and thoughts. It should have been refined by some kind of witchcraft. Chu Tian looked at the struggling insect in his hand. If my guesses aren't wrong, this envoy had just left Green City when he was attacked. This insect was planted in his brain and his mind was controlled to participate in the negotiations. In the end, he angered the locals and was killed, as well as angering the gnomes. Dolores was suddenly enlightened. This also means that the one behind the scenes is the shamans? That's right. Since we've locked onto the one behind the scenes, this matter will be much easier. A blue and white flame was released from Chu Tian's fingertip and the insect was not even ash left. Then let me experience this so-called shaman religion. Acting City Lord Clark was stunned. This young human did not seem simple. Chapter 410. Dolores admired Chu Tian even more. The shaman religion was a mysterious religion of the spirit beasts in the savage highlands. It was different from the demonic god religion's summoning and beast-taming techniques. The shaman sorcerers mainly used curse attacks, soul attacks, witchcraft, and insect poisons. This kind of strange insect-controlling technique was definitely a high-level witchcraft technique of the shaman religion. The person controlled by this witchcraft technique was no different from a normal person. There was no way to detect it. This was because their mind, soul, and thoughts did not have any additional states. It was purely controlling their thoughts on a physical and material level. The runes drawn by Chu Tian had not disappeared yet and Clark's face was filled with a bit of surprise. You can only use witchcraft to remove the shaman's witchcraft. This seems to be a shaman technique, It's just a small trick, not worth mentioning. The shaman religion was recorded in history, but in Chu Tian's era, this religion had already disappeared. Chu Tian had seen records of the shaman's witchcraft in an ancient book. This witchcraft did not need a special shaman cultivation technique, it was just a secret technique. Chu Tian had studied it a bit in the past. Although he was not proficient in it, it was more than enough to break these small insects. Since he knew who the opponent was, it was easy to deal with them. I still feel that the famine around Green City is a bit strange. Dolores knit her brows. This famine was strange, but she couldn't find anything strange about it, in the past, unless there was a migration of beasts, a large-scale natural disaster, or a geological change, it would cause the beasts living in the Greenland to change. There were no signs this time, it was a strange change. Clark was already suspicious of this. The shaman sorcerers set up an altar to use witchcraft to disturb the beasts, causing this series of changes. This is completely possible in theory. Only, we don't have any evidence and we don't know when it started. Even if we tell them now, those tribes won't believe us. No wonder the shamans reacted so quickly, Father actually helped them. Perhaps they had been preparing for several months, so they immediately grabbed the chance. This caused Chu Tian's plan to fail, this was too hateful. Speaking of this, the shaman religion's influence was not small. In the area around Green City, they had several 100,000 followers. Now they were inciting the locals to unite. Perhaps while the locals were attacking Green City, the shaman religion would send their followers to attack. Like this, even if the Green religion wasn't defeated, they would still suffer a large loss. I'm most worried about the shaman's witchcraft. Clark seemed to realize the seriousness of the matter. We don't know when the messenger was controlled by this kind of insect. It could be recently, or it could be even longer. Since the shaman sorcerer can control a half-elf, he can definitely control more half-elves. This is an objective reality. Chu Tian carefully introduced the shaman's witchcraft. This kind of voodoo would not kill the host directly. After it drilled into the host's brain, it would quickly take over the host's brain nerves, as well as his emotions and way of thinking. The host would be completely controlled in a state of unconsciousness. He would be able to eat and sleep as usual, and the people closest to him would not notice any abnormalities. These people controlled by the voodoo were like time bombs. When the shaman religion needed to use these chess pieces, the shaman priests would use witchcraft to activate them. The host would instantly lose their ability to think and become a puppet under the control of the shaman's witchcraft. The shaman sorcerer did not need to completely control the host's thoughts and could use witchcraft to subtly change the host's thoughts. This was because emotions were a kind of spiritual energy and spiritual energy could be created through material methods. Dolores and Clark were both dumbfounded. The shaman's witchcraft was mysterious and vicious, but outsiders knew very little about it. This foreign human was even more knowledgeable than the locals who had dealt with the shaman sorcerers for decades. This kind of witchcraft that could control one's thoughts was clearly a secret of the shaman religion. How did he know about it? No wonder, no wonder. The shaman religion could develop this quickly. Not only did they have a large influence in the surrounding tribes, there were also several shaman temples in Green City. So the problem was here. The local army had several 100,000 followers. They had several 100,000 followers over the years. There were also over 100 true spirit realm shaman sorcerers, as well as the core fighting strength of the shaman religion, as well as the puppets they had controlled in Green City over the years. This was a very terrifying strength. The local army had been formed for 3-4 days and there were already over 100,000 of them gathered. It was said that this number was still increasing and it could reach several 100,000. These locals had mostly mobilized all the adult males in their tribes. With this kind of effort and high efficiency, who would believe that the shamans weren't playing tricks on them? Once the locals attacked the city, the shaman religion's army would also attack. Adding in the cooperation of Green City, how would the gnomes deal with this situation? Also, if the shaman spirit beasts and the Green City gnomes fought, would the undead religion warlocks just stand by and watch? Even the druids were an unknown variable. Chu Tian pointed out all the stakes. Mr. is truly clear on this matter. Clark never thought that Chu Tian would be so clear on this matter. He was sitting high up as the acting city lord, but he was actually this careless. His head was covered in sweat at this moment. Green City's situation is even more dangerous than I thought. The gnomes were proficient in research, but they were not good at diplomacy or military tactics. Now that the water was becoming muddier, he couldn't think of a way to solve it. Dolores was also shocked. Not to mention Clark, who would have thought that the situation would be this bad? Who would have thought that the situation would be this bad? Clark asked in a trembling voice, "Then how many gnomes does Mr. think have become puppets of the shaman sorcerers?" This kind of goo is very hard to refine and it will consume the refiner's cultivation and vitality, so there won't be many of them. You don't need to worry about this. Chu Tian carefully considered it, just follow my arrangements. The gnomes will only be responsible for stabilizing Green City and I will take care of everything else. Could this situation really be taken care of? Clark already had no confidence in his heart. He could only believe in this outsider, a person that could become Green City's city lord. In the evening, the 150,000 elites of the forest gathered in the forest. The morale of the locals was high and they were filled with killing intent. When they gathered, there would be locals joining in from time to time. Of course, these were all small powers that wanted to take advantage of the situation to loot Green City. The Allied Army Conference began. The ogres, tigers, leopards, lizards, snakes. The various large tribe chiefs and the high-level members of the various tribes all came to participate in this conference. These different local leaders all had angry expressions on their faces at this moment. Green City is too arrogant. They actually want to exterminate us and make us their slaves. These gnomes don't even know they are about to die. Do they really think they are still 100 years ago? We will quickly gather several 100,000 people. At that time, with the support of the shaman religion's witchcraft, our battle strength will increase by more than double. It will be easy for us to flatten these outwardly strong gnomes. The entire Allied army was covered in a layer of rage, violence, and fanaticism. They all wanted to charge into Green City and burn Green City to ashes, stealing all the wealth and food. Several goat race shaman priests stood in the corner with a smile of ridicule on their faces. The Minotaur chief Arnold is leading 5,000 Minotaurs to join the alliance. The group of locals suddenly became excited. The Minotaurs were very strong and they had bodies not inferior to ogres, but they specialized in charging at the front lines. The charge of these 5,000 Minotaurs was enough to easily tear apart the weak gnomes' defenses. Arnold was the Minotaur tribe's chief, but he was actually personally participating in this mission. This Arnold was the youngest chief of the Minotaurs in 200 years. He was a typical blockhead with a fiery and straightforward personality. He was a Minotaur that couldn't be more traditional, but with the Minotaurs' personalities, they wouldn't play any tricks. Since Arnold had personally come, it meant that the Minotaurs also wanted to steal from Green City. More than a dozen tribal chiefs and a few shaman sorcerers received Arnold. One of the tribe chiefs said, "Arnold, you're only taking out 5,000 Minotaurs, isn't that too little? There are over 100,000 Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley." Another tribe chief followed up, "We'll split the loot according to work, whoever does more will get more." I'm afraid 5,000 Minotaurs won't be enough. The Minotaurs aren't just sending soldiers. Arnold gave a simple smile, "You don't lack soldiers, so the Minotaurs will give you what you lack the most." "What do we lack?" "Food." "What?" The various tribe chiefs were stunned. "You're saying you'll give us food?" Arnold's large body moved to the side and he pointed at the Minotaurs behind him. All the tribe chiefs looked over. Several thousand fully armed Minotaurs were pulling a large pile of tin cans, giving them to the local soldiers one by one. The entire Allied camp was covered in cheers. The various tribe chiefs were all stunned. What is going on?" Arnold said with a laugh, "A human merchant came to the Minotaurs not long ago and this food was bought from him. There's enough good wine and meat, enough to fight our way to Green City." "Human merchant? Where did this human merchant come from? How could he bring this much food into the forest? The local chiefs were all surprised and their killing intent weakened by a lot. There were even some people who asked Arnold how to contact this human merchant. I don't know his background. Arnold shook his head, but if you need, I can help you contact him. The shaman priests looked at each other. They could see the surprise in each other's eyes. One of the shaman priests pinched a seal and muttered an incantation. Roar! An ogre suddenly roared out, if we take down Green City, how much food can we not have? Why spend a large amount of money to trade with a human merchant? Not to mention, who knows how much food this merchant can provide? If we take down Green City, it will be enough for us to eat for 10 years. That's right. Attack Green City. Arnold, your food has come at the right time. Once our soldiers are full, we will definitely take down Green City. We'll give you a portion at that time. Arnold nodded. This Minotaur chief looked over at the shaman priest and revealed a strange expression. Chapter 411. Green City, the Shaman Temple. Several dozen shaman priests were gathered around the altar for a ceremony. The shaman religion came from the savage highlands. The religion's followers were mainly spirit beasts, orcs, and trolls, believing in the shaman god and the sorcerer god. The Green City shaman religion had existed several hundred years ago. At that time, the gnomes' green religion was still very strong, so the shaman religion did not have much development. Several decades ago, the gnomes experienced several wars and quickly weakened, so the shaman religion welcomed an opportunity to develop in the Green City area. Several decades ago, the Savage Highlands sent the High Priest Mars to Green City, allowing Mars to develop the entire Green City area. Because the High Priest Mars was very strong and adding in the resources of the Savage Highlands, the shaman religion in Green City had increased by several dozen times in just a few decades. Now, there were several tens of thousands of shaman sorcerers in Green City. The several tens of thousands of shaman sorcerers were all very dangerous characters, and there were over 100 shaman sorcerers who had obtained the surrender of the shaman priests. If a shaman sorcerer wanted to become an official shaman priest, not only did they need to be at the true spirit realm, they also needed to practice their witchcraft to perfection. Just like this. The shaman religion had gained a foothold in Green City. The high priest led the several tens of thousands of shaman sorcerers to negotiate with the gnomes, obtaining the qualifications to build a temple in Green City. Then they spread to the surrounding tribes, and now the number of shaman religion believers in the forest had reached several 100,000. This was a power that could threaten the green religion. At this moment, there were over 2,000 strong figures that were densely packed together in the shaman temple. They did not move at all, just like statues. Each one of them released a terrifying aura. They were definitely strong characters in the forest. They were already not people. These fellows were covered in the runes of the shaman religion, just like a giant human painting. From their feet to their legs to their bodies, from their heads to their chests to their fingers, they were completely covered. A strong curse and witchcraft energy was being released from these people's bodies. Voodoo puppets, these were puppets refined from extremely cruel witchcraft. The shaman sorcerers sang and danced around the voodoo puppets for a while before suddenly gently pulling the voodoo puppets' hair. In the end, their scalps and skulls were pulled out, just like opening a lid, but these voodoo puppets did not move at all. The brains of every wizard puppet had long been hollowed out. The shaman sorcerer grabbed a bunch of worms, which looked like thousands of centipedes or earthworms, and stuffed them into the empty skull of the shaman puppet. Every insect was a witchcraft that the shaman sorcerer had spent a lot of effort to refine. After stuffing these insects that contained powerful witchcraft power into the shaman puppet's brain, the shaman sorcerer immediately covered its skull and started singing again. On the shaman altar, a white-haired old troll raised his hands high. A thick and vigorous energy revolved around the shaman temple. Great shaman god and witch god, please accept the sacrifice of your servant, and bestow upon the wizard puppet great power. A burst of intense light exploded from the altar, turning into thousands of light beams that landed on the Wu puppet's body. The worms that were wriggling in the skull instantly became several times more active, drilling into the Wu puppet's body. Every Wu puppet had worms crawling under its skin, and the light from the shaman runes on its body became even more intense. Finally, the things that were motionless like statues were awakened. Their originally empty eyes suddenly had eyeballs and they were filled with spirit. They all knelt down on one knee and a deep voice came from their mouths, "Long live the shamans." The 2,000 shaman sorcerers' carefully refined Wu puppets were finally awakened. These puppets were not ordinary puppets. Other than the fact that they were enchanted with all kinds of witchcraft and curses from head to toe, which gave each of them a terrifying combat strength, their bodies were almost immortal. They were not afraid of fire, water, acid, or cutting. They even had simple thinking abilities. They could be said to be perfect puppet warriors. The time has come. A white-haired old troll opened his eyes, revealing a pair of sparkling eyes. This battle will turn Green City into ruins. This was the shaman high priest Mars from the Savage Highlands. He was an old troll with unfathomable witchcraft and was already over 150 years old this year. Mars called out in a low voice, "Luz. High priest, what orders do you have?" A green-skinned orc walked in front of Mars. Luz was an orc shaman and although he was young, his attainments in witchcraft were very shocking. Luz's witchcraft was second only to Mars, therefore he had a very high position in the Greenland shaman religion. He was basically the number 2 person and was also Mars' assistant. Mars looked at his assistant and said, "How are the preparations of the troops outside?" Lurtz replied, "When the tribes start to attack, the shaman army will also start to attack. With our help from the inside, this battle is almost certain. We can't be careless. Although the gnomes are weak, no one knows what cards they have." Mars said in a deep voice, "The gnomes have surrendered to the eternal forest, so we don't have much time left. We can use the chess pieces we've buried among the gnomes, go and awaken them." "Yes, High Priest." Luz brought several shaman sorcerers to a secluded cliff and began to use witchcraft, activating the chess pieces the shamans had buried among the gnomes. These chess pieces had been unknowingly infected by the shamans' brain-controlling witchcraft. The goo had already parasitized the brains of the gnomes and as long as the shamans did not activate it, the gnomes would return to normal. Now it was time to use these chess pieces. Luz and the shaman sorcerers began to chant and immediately felt the existence of the witchcraft. They were all activated, allowing the witchcraft to take over their thoughts, making these gnomes come here to meet him. The sorcerer could send a few simple messages to the witchcraft, like calling them over. But those complex instructions could not be directly sent. The shaman sorcerer had to bring the host to their side and directly send detailed instructions to the host. After around 20 minutes, 5 gnomes appeared here. These were the 5 gnomes controlled by the shaman sorcerers. They were all high-level gnomes and as long as they controlled these gnomes, they could open the barrier at the critical moment and turn off the green protectors. This would paralyze Green City's defenses and increase the shaman religion's chances of winning by at least 20%. "Let's begin." Luz waved his hand. The 5 shaman sorcerers walked over to the 5 gnomes. They were prepared to control them and send out the relevant instructions. Suddenly, the 5 gnomes made a move at almost the same time. Poisonous vines shot out from the ground and instantly wrapped around the 5 defenseless shaman sorcerers. Finally, a vine pierced through their bodies. "What?" Luz was shocked. Before he could understand what was happening, the grass around him was suddenly bestowed with some kind of power as a low and deep voice echoed in his ears. "God of nature above, please bestow the vitality of a giant dragon upon all living beings." This was the Green Religion's giant dragon's power technique. It was definitely a high-level technique. There were less than 10 people in Green City that could use this move. Luz could no longer run. The originally soft grass suddenly began to wildly swell, instantly turning him into a giant rice dumpling. When the natural energy was added, each blade of grass became harder than steel and had a very terrifying strength. As long as the other side was willing, even an earth dragon could be turned into mincemeat. The energy released from the grass could even suppress Luz's spirit energy, making him lose the ability to resist. Clark put down his staff and gave a cold laugh. You didn't expect it. It's you. Luz looked at Clark and then at the 5 dead sorcerers before looking at the 5 normal gnomes. He could clearly feel that the voodoo insects were in the gnomes' brains, but he didn't know why he couldn't activate them. At this time, there was a handsome human youth that was leading a seductive Fox clan member, walking out from behind Clark. Demonic god priest? Luz couldn't understand why a priest of such a weak sect would appear here. Dolores revealed a tender smile. Sir City Lord truly has divine foresight. Not only did you catch him in the act, you also caught the second in command of the shaman religion. Strange, how did you know that Mars would send this fellow? Letting the gnome puppets remove Green City's defenses is a very important task. If I was that high priest, I would have sent the most capable person to do it. How do we deal with this person? I think it's better to just kill him. Dolores's words made Luz's expression change. She continued to say, this fellow's position in the shaman religion is not low. If we can kill him, not only will it decrease the shaman religion's strength, it will also greatly affect their morale. Clark also thought the same. Luz's witchcraft skills were only below Mars. He could easily kill him with a sneak attack, otherwise it would not have been so easy to subdue him. Chu Tian shook his head as he walked in front of Luz. Priest Luz, your father has always been a local shaman. Before Mars came, your father was the shaman leader here, am I right? So what? If there was no Mars, you would have inherited your father's legacy and become the local shaman leader. The meaning in Chu Tian's words was very clear. The shamans have always been independent. Why would you listen to Mars and become a puppet and chess piece of the Savage Highlands? Luz gave a cold laugh. Don't you think this method of sowing discord is too laughable? I think you should first understand a problem. I'm not trying to drive a wedge between you, and actually eradicating a trivial shaman religion is not a hard matter for me. I don't need to use this kind of method. I just feel that it is a pity for the shamans to disappear from Green City. After all, the shaman witchcraft still has a bit of use. Luz had a strange expression on his face. This fellow's tone was very light, like he did not place the local shaman religion in his eyes at all. Mars was a shaman priest sent by the Savage Highlands. He had directly received orders from the Savage Highlands, so there was no possibility of peace talks. The only one he could use was Luz. Chu Tian then said, first let me introduce myself. I am the Elven King's Green City's city lord, and this place will become my territory. I'll give you 2 choices now, one is to turn to ashes with the shamans, or the other is to join hands with me to defeat Mars. I'll let you become the local shaman leader, giving you protection and freedom. I'll allow the shamans to become a member of Green City and let you develop in Green City. Why would the Eternal Forest send a human to be the city lord? Luz looked at Clark beside him. Although Clark's expression was a bit complicated, it seemed to confirm his words. I don't know much about curses or witchcraft, but I have a bit of confidence in my alchemy skills. Chu Tian took out a pill and forcefully shoved it into Luz's mouth. This pill will take effect in 3 days and corrode your entire body, finally causing you to dissolve and die. Don't try your luck, there is no one in the Forest of Chaos that can cure my pill. I believe you are a smart person, and a smart person should know how to make a smart choice. I have at least 10 ways to destroy you. Even if Green City can't destroy you, are you willing to be ordered around by the Savage Highlands and become a pawn that can be sacrificed at any time? I've already said this, you can decide for yourself. Chu Tian waved his hand at Clark and Clark released him. Chu Tian did not even look at him as he immediately left with Clark and Dolores. Damn! Luz could feel that there was a medicinal energy that had spread to every cell in his body in just a few seconds. He had never seen such a powerful poison that could hide itself. The human was not lying, perhaps it would be hard to find someone in the Forest of Chaos that could cure this poison. Not to mention that the incubation period was only 3 days. This also meant that if he didn't make a choice in 3 days, he would die for sure. Damn! He had fallen to this point because of a moment of carelessness. Where did that mysterious human come from? From their appearance, it seemed like they did not place the shaman religion in their eyes. When Luz returned to the shaman temple, High Priest Urs looked at him. Have you arranged the chess pieces? Luz lowered his head with a strange look in his eyes. He said in a calm voice, High Priest can be assured, everything has been arranged. Chapter 4:12. Luz could not explain the reason. When he saw that young human, he had a bad premonition in his heart. What made him make this decision in the end was not the poison in his body, but rather that human's methods. He could break the witchcraft. The 5 gnomes were clearly controlled by the witchcraft. The witchcraft was still in their minds, but the shaman sorcerer had lost control of them. This made Luz feel very uneasy. The shaman sorcerer's witchcraft curse could not be broken. This was where the shaman sorcerer's confidence came from. Now the truth was in front of him. Not only had the witchcraft been broken, he had also seen through the shaman religion's plans. The gnome Clark was already making preparations. Like this, the shamans were in a disadvantageous position. This battle that they had a 90% chance of winning had been reduced by at least half. Luz's ancestors had come to the Green City area and he had been a native shaman since his father's generation, so he did not have much contact with the Savage Highlands. If it wasn't for the Savage Highlands sending High Priest Mars, the two of them would have become 2 different powers. This was something that the human had calculated very accurately. Although Mars had absolute authority in the religion and all the shaman priests had to listen to him, the local shaman sorcerers made up the majority of the Greenland's shamans. Rather than saying they were afraid of High Priest Mars, it was better to say they were afraid of the giant hidden in the Savage Highlands. Once the Savage Highlands were enraged, the little Greenland's shamans were not worth mentioning at all. In fear of this giant, the Greenland's shamans had no choice but to accept Mars' leadership, becoming a power placed in Green City by the Savage Highlands. According to normal development, the shaman sorcerers would continue to erode the gnomes and finally control Green City. Who would have thought that the gnomes would suddenly rely on the Eternal Forest? This made the Savage Highlands very angry. In order to prevent the Eternal Forest from controlling the city, they decided to destroy Green City. The Green City Shaman's foundation was in Green City, so without Green City, they would be greatly affected. The gnomes were not weak, so if they went all out against the gnomes, the shamans would have to pay a heavy price. Not to mention that Green City already belonged to the Eternal Forest. The strength of the elves was not something the shamans could imagine. Luz could already vaguely feel that they had become a chess piece for the forest giants. A chess piece used to test the Eternal Forest's bottom line, a chess piece that could be sacrificed at any time. Lurtz pondered for a long time before coming to a decision. He said to the shaman beside him, "Call Priest Karel and Priest Hilton over, I have something to discuss with them." Priest Karel and Priest Hilton were Luz's trusted aides and the main leaders of the Green Country shamans, so he had to discuss this matter with them. Chu Tian brought Dolores and Clark away from Lurtz. Clark said uneasily, "You're going to let Luz off just like that? He is not a character that is easy to control. It was hard for us to regain this advantage, but if Mars notices this, perhaps Green City will fall into a disadvantageous situation." Clark now had a whole new level of respect for this young man. Chu Tian had only been in the Green City area for a week and he had only studied the situation of the major powers and their main members before arranging today's plan. It was bold and radical. If it really succeeded, it would greatly reduce the pressure, but if it failed, Green City would lose this advantage. This was because once the shaman sorcerers noticed it, the gnomes would find it hard to carry out their plans. "Damn, that damn old gnome, he actually doesn't believe me." Chu Tian's face was filled with disdain as he said to Dolores beside him, "Do you believe me? Sir City Lord breaking the shaman's witchcraft has dealt a large psychological blow to Luz, making him doubt the effectiveness of the shaman's witchcraft. The poison that Sir City Lord gave him is a threat to Luz's survival. There is no one in this world that is willing to die. Dolores seemed like she had already understood. The most important thing is that Sir City Lord has cleverly used the shaman sorcerer's internal differences, especially the Highland shamans represented by Mars and the Green City shamans represented by Luz. This relationship is not obvious normally, but in this special period, there is a lot that can be done. So I think this plan can be tried. Chu Tian said with a nod, after I become the City Lord, you will be the City Lord's assistant. Dolores revealed a look of joy and immediately thanked him in a sweet voice. Clark, on the other hand, felt very awkward. This human seemed to think that the City Lord's throne was already in the bag, which made him feel a little unhappy. Even if this human had some ability, he was still a human. Half-elves would not be convinced by humans. What should we do now? The shamans have pretty much been dealt with. We need to guard against other powers trying to fish in troubled waters. According to what I know, other than the shamans, the most troublesome ones in Green City are the undead religion and the druids. That's right. Clark's expression turned serious again. Although he was a bit unsatisfied with the human in front of him, this was related to the survival of Green City, so he did not dare be too careless. The founder of the undead religion is a lich from the Dragon's Ridge, Segister. This lich is very strange and mysterious, not showing himself at all. Even the necromancer priests under him are very strange, so we can't predict their movements like the shamans. It is simply impossible to guard against them. What about the druids? The druids are different from the shamans and the undead. The druids are a very loose but widely spread religion in the Forest of Chaos. The druids gathered around Green City should not have any background, but they are rebellious and don't listen to discipline, turning a blind eye to Green City's rules. They have been doing things their own way for a long time, which gives me a headache. It's like this. The gnomes really had no future. A good city was actually turned into this by these foreign powers. It was no wonder they had to rely on the eternal forest. Dolores asked, our main enemy this time is the shamans. Although we can't rule out the undead and druids taking advantage of the chaos, if we make plans against them at the same time, I'm afraid it will scatter our energy and it will be disadvantageous to the overall situation. You're right. Chu Tian did not plan on eliminating them all at once. After all, with Green City's current strength, it was not enough to fight 1 against 3. He asked Clark, how many green protectors does Green City have? There are a total of 3,000, with 2,000 being weakened by a strange disease. The others need to guard the passages and passes, so I'm afraid there is no way to transfer them. Strange disease? Chu Tian slightly knit his brows. Bring me to take a look. Clark brought Chu Tian to an open-air temple in Green City. This was one of the places where the green protectors were cultivated. There were several hundred green protector seedlings that were currently growing under the light of the green altar. Other than that, there were several hundred giant green protectors that had been moved here. They were all complete, but they could no longer be used. The green protector was a very powerful synthetic life form. It was created by the gnomes from the ancient war trees and was controlled by the green religion's priests. It could be considered one of the gnomes' greatest inventions. Each green protector could be used for 1,000 years. When Green City was at its peak 200-300 years ago, there were around 20,000 green protectors, which was enough to cover the entire territory, making it impossible for outsiders to invade. Now, there were less than 3,000 green protectors and 2,000 of them were sick, otherwise how could the shamans have this much courage? There was a spring of life in the center of the temple. This was not normal spring of life, it was something that the green religion priests had blessed and refined with the power of nature. Each drop was equivalent to a barrel of spring of life, so it was definitely a priceless treasure that had a very good effect on recovering injuries. These green protectors with strange diseases were now in a bad state. They were like dying trees with withered leaves. Although the gnomes did not hesitate to use the extremely pure spring of life to water them, they could only slow down the speed at which they withered, not showing any signs of turning around. This. Sir Clark, why did you bring a human here? This is my clan's important place and it hides our clan's secrets, how can we let a human spy on us? No matter where he went, he wouldn't be welcomed as a human. The gnome priests all looked at him with hostile eyes. Chu Tian was too lazy to care about them as he used his divine sense to quickly enter the Green Protector's body. He could vaguely feel that the Green Protector was filled with a strange energy, and it was this energy that was suppressing the Green Protector's vitality like a seal. Clark comforted the other gnomes, telling them to calm down. Since there was no hope, why not let this fellow try? The gnomes were very knowledgeable. If any gnome priest was placed in the human world, they would at least be great scholars or even scholars with the title of Kingdom Scholar. At least in this forest, there were few groups more knowledgeable than the gnomes. If all of this intelligence gathered together could not solve this problem, perhaps they would have to invite a sage to solve it. Moreover, it had to be a sage specializing in plants and life. Such a young human, how could he be a human-titled sage? The gnome's eyes were filled with disdain and disdain. Chu Tian took back his hand. This is a kind of death energy forming a slow-acting curse. I think it was done by the Lich, this fits their style. Dolores asked in a curious voice, is there a way to cure them? There is, but normal methods would require a lot of effort because these life forms have been deeply corroded by the curse. I'm afraid they won't be able to recover in a short period of time, so they won't be able to make it in time for this battle. Chu Tian hesitated for a few minutes before taking out a small bottle that was filled with a dark red liquid. He gave the bottle to Dolores, pour this into the water of life and then use the water of life to water them. The gnomes were all stunned. What did this human want to do? Dolores immediately wanted to do this, but she was stopped by several white-bearded gnomes. They looked at the fox girl and the human with wary eyes. One was a heretic and the other was a sly human, only the heavens knew what these two wanted to do. Clark gave a gentle cough, let them try it, there's no better way anyways. Dolores glared at the gnomes before pouring the contents of the bottle into the water of life. Almost in an instant, the entire spring water was covered in a layer of dark red as a strange energy was added to it. Dolores could feel the energy inside, so she looked at it with a questioning gaze. Chu Tian nodded, pour it. She immediately poured the water onto the half-dead Green Protector. An unbelievable thing happened. The moment the light red droplet landed on the Green Protector's body, there was a sizzling sound. Wherever the water droplet touched, the gray color disappeared and the place it touched was filled with vitality. Those withered leaves were instantly filled with vitality. The gnomes were all stunned. What was going on? This was completely incomprehensible. Chu Tian revealed a pained expression. The divine blood could break any curse and this spring water from the spring of life could revive the Green Protectors, so naturally it would have a good effect. Chu Tian did not have much divine blood on him. This thing could be used to refine the divine blood in corpses, so using it like this was a bit too extravagant. However, the effect was immediate. Before long, many of the Green Protectors would completely recover and this new battle strength would be enough to stabilize the rear. Chapter 413. After the Green Protectors were watered, the dead would quickly recover and the leaves became greener than before. This terrifying recovery speed could be seen by the naked eye and a pool of water of life could water 400-500 Green Protectors. The problem that the gnomes couldn't solve with a large amount of energy was solved by Chu Tian with a wave of his hand. Those green leaves were filled with vitality and there were traces of blood that were hard to see with the naked eye on the surface of each leaf. It was like a pattern or an array that made the Green Protector release a special aura, as if it was stronger than before. The Green Religion priests quickly inspected them. Forest divinity above. The vitality of these Green Protectors has been doubled. Each Green Protector's regeneration, recovery, and strength have all been greatly increased. These puppet creatures that had been contaminated by unknown curses and energy and were on the verge of death now seemed to have been baptized by a special energy, allowing their quality to improve by leaps and bounds. The Green Protectors could only be used for 1,000 years, but now the gnomes could no longer detect an upper limit to their lifespan. Unbelievable. Clark looked at Chu Tian, after the Green religion priests strengthened the Green Protectors 100 years ago, they couldn't find a way to strengthen the Green Protectors, but you did it with a small bottle. Can you tell me what it is? As long as we can collect this thing, Green City's strength will increase greatly. Of course I can tell you, but I'm afraid you won't be able to collect it with your abilities. Chu Tian softly said, this is the essence blood condensed by an ancient god before it died. The divine blood can break all curses, so it can quickly restore these life forms. The gnomes and the fox girl were shocked. What did he say? Did their ears make a mistake? Chu Tian shrugged his shoulders and explained, the Green Protectors are life forms cultivated from the fragments of the ancient war trees, so they have the attributes of an ancient divine object. Therefore, they have a high absorption rate of the divine blood, resulting in some changes. Not only will these Green Protectors become stronger, they will also not be afraid of curses. Spiritual gods were legendary existences. How could Chu Tian even have this kind of thing? The most important thing was that this human had casually taken out such a precious thing to save a few normal puppet lives. This behavior was simply like embedding a top-grade crystal diamond in a latrine pit. It was too fucking extravagant. Dolores's eyes were almost shining. You actually have such a divine item on you? That's nothing. Chu Tian casually waved his hand, but his heart was still aching. However, he believed in the principle of not regretting it if he gave it away. Since he chose to act cool, he would act cool to the end, so he waved his hand and said, alright, you can place the healed Green Protectors near the Necromancer Temple and let them bask in the sunlight. These polluted and cursed Green Protectors were placed in front of the undead temple. Of course it was not as simple as basking in the sunlight. This could form a powerful deterrent effect on the necromancers. First, the curse and pollution of the necromancers were purified. This would definitely be a great shock to them. Second, these healed Green Protectors were placed here to send a message to the necromancers. That was that Green City already knew that it was them who caused the deaths of so many Green Protectors. Third, these Green Protectors were enough to crush the entire Necromancer Temple. The several dozen necromancers stationed here would not be able to escape. This was a psychological warning and deterrence to the necromancers. It was also equivalent to taking a hostage, making the troops they had secretly trained outside not make a move. This deterrent effect was enough to make the necromancers hesitate. Chu Tian just needed to calm the chaos as fast as possible and the necromancers would not be able to react in time. There's still enough time. Chu Tian looked up at the cloudless sky. Let's take care of the last problem. I want to visit the druids. Clark never thought that Chu Tian would have this kind of idea. The druids will not give you face, they are all wild and unruly people. Ha, that's not certain. Green City's territory was very large. Accurately speaking, Green City was a mountain area. It would take half a day to travel from one side of Green City to another on a flying demon beast. Just Green City alone was 5-6 times the size of Southern Xia's Imperial City. Southern Xia's Imperial City had 7-8 million people, but Green City only had 1 million. Moreover, Green City was a three-dimensional structure, with many living areas and castles being built in the middle of the mountains. This was completely different from a flat human city, so Green City seemed to be one with nature. If one counted the natural city walls surrounding the mountain range, then Green City was over 200 times the size of Southern Xia's Imperial City. It was almost the size of half the Imperial region. This was only a city. Green City had a large mountain range, a wide lake, wild demon beasts, and hidden immortal herbs in a corner. In short, whether it was the diversity of life or the changes in the landscape, it was not strange at all in this special city. This was the southeast part of Green City and the entire area was covered in a quiet and lush rainforest. There were many towering mountain peaks that were like heaven-supporting pillars surrounding the surroundings. Each pillar was covered in green plants that were arranged in a certain pattern, just like a natural array. In the depths of the rainforest, a shrine covered in moss stood in the middle of it. This was the Druids' temple. The Druids were a free power in the forest, not belonging to any power. The Druids' followers were very widespread, with elves, spirit beasts, and in some areas outside the Forest of Chaos, even humans believed in the Druids. Chu Tian brought Dolores and Clark through the rainforest to the temple. Roar! A warning roar came from the top of a tall rainforest tree to the side. A giant wolf was standing there, staring at the intruders with a pair of green eyes. This was a level 3 shadow wolf. It was said to be a terrifying killer in the forest, able to silently kill any prey. The Umbra demon wolf didn't attack. It looked at them with clear and intelligent eyes, and a human voice burst out from its huge, ferocious wolf mouth: "The Druids don't welcome outsiders. If you dare to take another step forward, don't blame the Druids for being impolite." While speaking, there were already many Druids appearing all around. These Druids had turned into wild beasts. There were giant apes, giant bears, and earth dragons, all of which were very strong demon beasts. The most important thing was that these were not just wild beasts, they were wild beasts filled with intelligence. Their intelligence and the Druids' abilities made them stronger than normal wild demon beasts. Perhaps as long as they gave the order, the Druids would immediately tear the intruders to pieces. Dolores and Clark were on guard as the killing intent coming from their surroundings was real. The Druids were a wild and unruly group. They respected nature and doing as they pleased, doing everything according to their own rules, so it was hard for Green City's rules to restrict them. Even if they recognized acting City Lord Clark, the Druids would not show mercy. This group of Druids had a very strong strength. Although the Druids were very loose and closed off, in terms of battle strength, they were even above the shaman sorcerers and necromancers. Chu Tian calmly said, "I'm here to see Prophet Yoda." The Umbra demon wolf suddenly leapt into the air and its body emitted light as it strangely transformed into a human. When it landed on the ground, it had already turned into a valiant wolfman. It roared at Chu Tian with a cold killing intent that made people's hairs stand on end. Dolores and Clark both revealed looks of vigilance. Chu Tian faced the wolf-man druid with a mouth full of fangs, but he still acted as if nothing had happened. This was because he was clear that the people in the Divine Nature Temple would not know that Chu Tian had arrived. As expected, a low and deep voice came from inside. "It's rare for a guest to visit the Druid Temple. Invite them in." Chu Tian did not even look at the aggressive wolf-man druid and swaggered into the Divine Nature Temple. Clark and Dolores both hesitated for a few seconds before following behind Chu Tian. Hundreds of high-level druids in all directions turned back into their human forms. They all had murderous looks on their faces and were very unfriendly. How could these damned fellows dare to disturb the prophet? The Druid religion pursued nature and simplicity. Therefore, there were almost no decorations in the Druid temple. It was like a primitive and ancient house. There was only a huge statue of a goddess high up in the sky. It was the goddess of nature that the Druids believed in. Her huge wings were spread out to protect the throne in front of her, and on this simple throne sat a strange person. Chu Tian had never seen this race before. He was only a meter tall and had the green skin of a goblin. He also had the long ears of an elf and was full of wrinkles like a gnome. He looked like a mix of 3 races. He wore a simple robe and sat cross-legged with a long staff on his lap. His entire body was shrouded in a layer of mysterious aura. This was the legendary Druid Master Yoda. Dolores had never seen him before and had only heard of his name in rumors. Yoda was a prophet of the Forest of Chaos Druid religion. A druid with the title of prophet was equivalent to a bishop in a church, which was even higher than a high priest. No one in Green City had seen Yoda make a move before, but it was said that before he moved to Green City, Yoda had turned into a dragon and fought with an ancient vicious beast. What kind of terrifying creature was a dragon? If this rumor was true, then even the high priests of Green City added together would not be a match for Yoda. The most powerful part was not this. It was said that the Druid prophets were different from normal people and had the ability to communicate with spiritual gods to predict the future. If a large matter happened in the forest, as long as the prophet wanted to know, there was nothing that could be hidden from the prophet's eyes and ears. This was also why Clark was very afraid of the Druids. The Druids were relatively low-key, but the threat they posed to the Green Religion and Green City was not below the shaman sorcerers and necromancers. Not to mention that they were a group of unruly fellows, so anyone with this kind of influence in their territory would not be safe. Prophet Yoda would not easily meet people. Clark had only met Yoda twice in the past 30 years. This was also why when he knew that Chu Tian wanted to visit the Druids, Clark tried to stop him. This was because it was completely useless. If he disturbed these sensitive Druids, it would attract unnecessary trouble. Who would have thought that Yoda would directly accept Chu Tian's request? This was something that no one had expected. Prophet Yoda opened his eyes. His head was very small, but his eyes were very large, just like a young animal. However, it was different from the innocent eyes of a small animal. Yoda's eyes were clear and sharp, as if he could see through everything. I'm called Chu Tian. I've admired the Druid religion for a long time. Being fortunate enough to meet the legendary Druid prophet, it truly isn't easy. Chu Tian did not avoid Yoda's sharp eyes at all, but since it's such a coincidence, how about Master Yoda read my fortune for me? Impudent. With these disrespectful words, all the surrounding Druids were filled with rage. The prophet had a very high position in the Druid religion and every Druid grew up under the teachings of the prophet. This weak human actually dared to be this rude to Master Yoda. This was simply looking down on the Druid religion. This was unforgivable. Clark and Dolores' expressions changed. They never thought that Chu Tian would run to the Druid temple and make this kind of request to their prophet in front of all these Druids. Chapter 4:14. Yoda's clear and sharp eyes were as calm as a water mirror. There was not the slightest ripple or undercurrent. He gently waved his hand, and the surrounding Druids all quieted down. Although there were some dissatisfied growls coming from their mouths, no one dared to make a move. Young human, I can feel that you are different from the others. Prophet Yoda calmly said, the Druid prophets can indeed feel a trace of fate, but it's a pity that this ability is limited. The stronger the fate, the more complicated it is, and the harder it is to see. I can see the life of a worm, but I can't see the life of a giant dragon. As for you. Yoda's large eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. Forgive me for saying this, but although you are standing in front of me, I can't feel your fate at all. It's like you don't belong to this time and space. This is a feeling I have never experienced before. The legends were true. The Druid prophets really had this kind of mysterious ability. Chu Tian had read about it in ancient books before. There were some ancient prophets in this world and they had the innate talent to see things people couldn't see. Chu Tian was just trying it out, but Yoda's words shocked him. Could it be that this fellow could really see something? Fate is a river and we are all a speck of dust in it. Wherever we go, it is all arranged by fate. We follow the current and cannot resist it. When Yoda said this, he suddenly revealed an interested expression. There is a fish that has jumped into this river. Not only is it trying to change its direction, wherever it goes, all the specks of dust will deviate from their original path. I can feel that anyone who interacts with you will have their fate changed. Yoda's eyes fell onto Dolores and Clark before revealing an emotional expression. Green City's situation is already unpredictable, all the lines are in chaos. This was certain. If Chu Tian did not appear, the young Miss, Yingying, Nangong, and everyone else would have followed their original path. Chu Tian's appearance had changed history, so Yoda's words were correct. Chu Tian was a little surprised. Was there really someone in this world who could see through fate? Yoda's words reminded Chu Tian of the ancient gods sealed in the Central State's Tower of Trials. They also compared fate to a river. The more powerful one was, the more they could control their direction and position. However, even the most powerful person could not change the direction of the river of fate. Clark and Dolores were secretly shocked. This Druid prophet was even more profound than they had imagined. The most important thing was that the prophet's evaluation of Chu Tian was very profound. Even if a giant dragon was in front of him, even if Yoda could not accurately calculate its fate, he could feel the strength of its fate. He had no ability to pry into Chu Tian at all. The fate of all living beings in this world was actually a series of interconnected threads. When an unpredictable power interfered, it was bound to cause chaos in these threads. Even the Druid prophets would temporarily lose their ability to prophesy. This young human was indeed different from the others. Perhaps this was the reason why Prophet Yoda wanted to see him. Chu Tian gave a sigh. Since I can't calculate it, then I won't. Actually, knowing my own fate is quite boring. Isn't life always full of surprises? Prophet Yoda smiled. Mr. is very open-minded. You've come to the Druid temple. What advice do you have for the Druids? I don't dare give advice. Chu Tian did not keep them in suspense and directly threw out the chip he had thought of. I've heard that before Prophet Yoda brought the Druids to Green City, they had fought with a terrifying ancient fierce beast. Prophet Yoda's injuries have not healed yet. Yoda did not reply. But this was indeed the case. The Druids did not come here with a special purpose, it was just the gnomes' prejudice against the Druids. Yoda's strength at his peak could be considered a first-class expert in the Forest of Chaos, but after the battle with the fierce beast, his strength had fallen quite a bit. Of course, even if he wasn't as strong as before, Prophet Yoda was still comparable to the high priests of the large sections. Chu Tian did not keep them in suspense. I am the new city lord of Green City and admire the Druid culture. I can think of a way to cure the Prophet's injuries, but I hope that the Druids can ally with Green City. The other Druids' faces fell. He could cure the Prophet's injuries? If it was like this, then this was a large matter. Prophet Yoda did not lose his composure at all, even his eyes did not change. It was like this had nothing to do with him. Each Druid is free, I have no right to make a decision for the Druids. Chu Tian knit his brows. Why did this fellow not know what was good for him? Chu Tian lowered his request. I can give the Prophet an effective cure, but I don't want the Druids to be involved in the battle between Green City and the shamans. Yoda calmly said, the Druids love peace and will never be involved in a fight. As long as others do not look at us with hostility, we will not look at others with hostility. All right. Then it's a deal. Chu Tian was in a hurry, so he did not want to bargain with this Prophet. As long as he promised not to be involved in this conflict, everything else was fine. Chu Tian was quite at ease with the Druids. The people of this sect were quite simple and they believed in the god of nature and the god of Druids. The Druids did not have any lies or hypocrisy, and they would not participate in the power struggle. Chu Tian coming to the Druid temple to visit the Prophet was just insurance. Since the Prophet had personally promised something, Chu Tian believed the Druids could do it. When Chu Tian left with the gnomes and fox girls, Yoda closed his large bright eyes. His brows wrinkled even deeper as he fell into silence. The Druids looked at each other in blank dismay. They knew that when the Prophet did this, he must be thinking about something. Suddenly, Prophet Yoda suddenly raised his hand and his source spirit was released. Yoda's source spirit was very strange, it was actually a turtle shell. It was the kind of turtle shell used for sacrifices and divination. The Druids all knelt down on one knee seeing this. They all understood that the Prophet was going to make another prophecy. The surrounding Druid altars all poured some kind of energy into the turtle shell, causing words to appear on the surface of the turtle shell. This was the Druid Prophet's prophecy. Only, before the words appeared, the entire turtle shell began to crack and the cracks quickly covered the entire shell. With a thunderous sound, the entire turtle shell shattered into pieces. Pooh! Yoda spat out a mouthful of blood. Ah! Sir Prophet! The Druids quickly went up to support him, but Yoda waved his hand. He looked very weak, but there was no danger to his life. It really wasn't good. As long as he was beside this human, any divination or deduction abilities would lose their effect. He already had no way of predicting anything in Green City. All the threads here were tangled together and constantly changing, causing the other threads outside to change as well. Only when they were far enough away would they be able to regain this ability. Yoda revealed a strange and complex expression. Was there really a person in this world that could disturb fate? Chu Tian had used less than 2 days and everything had been arranged. Now he just had to wait for the shaman army and the local army to move. Around the 3rd day, the local army had reached around 230,000 people and they were all male elites from large tribes. This was already an army that could threaten the gnomes. The locals did not have any patience and now they did not want to wait any longer. Kill! 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 Over 200,000 people gathered in the forest, covering an area of over 10 miles. They were filled with wild killing intent and roars, just like a landslide, causing the birds and beasts in the forest to scatter. Several large tribe chiefs took the lead and decided to lead their subordinates into Green City to plunder. Several shaman sorcerers in the army used various witchcraft techniques on these people. For example, the berserk technique, bloodthirsty technique, and etc. When these local warriors were buffed by the various witchcraft techniques of the shaman priests, their battle strength naturally increased. Everything was in place. Green City is in front of us. Let us kill our way in and overthrow those weak gnomes. The local army could not wait any longer. Like a tide, they charged towards Green City. Green City's passages were filled with barriers and green protectors, but the shaman religion had already promised that as long as the local army attacked, the shaman sorcerers would close the defenses from the inside. Several 100,000 locals would be able to kill their way into Green City. The gnomes' battle strength was not that strong, so these several 100,000 would make them retreat. Not to mention that there was another group of shaman followers attacking at the same time, so there was hope of destroying Green City. Just when a dozen tribal chiefs led a tide of clansmen into the canyon, they suddenly found that all the barriers in the canyon had been opened, layer by layer, like a huge barrier. The 2 cliffs were filled with half-elf archers and half-elf priests. What's going on? Didn't the shamans say that they could close the gnomes' defenses? Although they were very dissatisfied with the current situation, they had already charged in. Even if Green City's defenses were not closed, they could only brace themselves and continue fighting. Who would have thought that when the locals were circulating their spirit energy to fight? Something that no one would have thought would happen. The locals had just begun circulating their spirit energy when it felt like their bodies were burning. All of their spirit energy went wild in their meridians and they could not control it at all. What is going on? Damn, we've been poisoned. Everyone has been poisoned. What is going on here? The locals were shocked to find that almost all of their main forces had been poisoned. Before they could react, the Minotaur chief Arnold suddenly gave a roar and his giant axe slashed down on a shaman priest. With a hua-la sound. The shaman priest was like a broken porcelain vase, instantly exploding into pieces of flesh and blood that filled the sky. The locals finally understood why everyone had been poisoned when they saw this. It was because the Minotaurs had done something to their food. The Minotaurs were a member of the locals and the other tribes were not on guard against the Minotaurs at all. They never would have thought that the Minotaurs would poison their food. Chapter 4:15. Arnold smashed a shaman priest to pieces. This was just the beginning, or rather it was an order, but the Minotaurs were filled with rage. These 3-4-meter-tall monsters had red eyes as they gasped for breath. They all brandished their axes and giant hammers as they surrounded the shaman priests, making the expressions of the shaman priests fall. You dare attack the shaman priests. The shaman god will not let you go. The shaman god will use the most vicious curse to make you wish you were dead. The goat tribe shaman gave a mournful roar. This kind of threat was completely useless against the enraged Minotaurs. The shaman priests were very strong, but there were only 5 shaman priests and there were 5,000 Minotaurs. This was a battle without any suspense. The shaman priests weren't strong in close combat, and with the large group of minotaurs charging at them, they didn't even have the strength to resist. The shaman that had been threatening the minotaurs a moment ago was instantly trampled into a pile of flesh and blood. Not even his original appearance could be seen. Arnold. The other locals all had ugly expressions. There was a chief who couldn't help angrily shouting, "You shameless traitor, actually betraying the forest's allies. You won't have a good death. Idiots." Arnold's large bull face revealed a taunting expression. "You don't even know that you've been used by others. Father is saving you, so it's fine if you want to die, but do you want to drag all the surrounding tribes down with you?" The chief angrily roared, "What did you say? I have concrete information and evidence. Everything is the doing of the shamans." Arnold took out a broken banner. "This is something I found in the forest. There is a witchcraft and demonic technique attached to it. The shaman sorcerers have reduced their prey. It's all a scheme." Arnold suddenly jumped onto a tall rock. "These despicable fellows want to use us as cannon fodder to attack Green City. There are many of you that have been controlled by the shaman priest's witchcraft, but you fools don't even know it." The Minotaur's loud voice reverberated through the valley, making the locals speechless with stunned looks. At this time, the barrier was removed and a gnome army entered the valley. "This Minotaur chief is right," the leading Green religion priest loudly shouted. 3 days ago, the Green City envoys were affected by the shaman religion's witchcraft. We have already investigated this. This conflict was purely instigated by shaman, so we have reason to believe that some of you are under shaman's control." Arnold ordered the Minotaurs to capture the chiefs and high-level leaders of the tribes. "What are you doing? Release our leader." The Green religion priest looked at Arnold. Arnold said without a doubt, "As far as I can see, these are the people." Not only did they encourage the tribes to work together, they were even willing to help the locals fight. It turned out that all of this had been arranged beforehand. These forest tribes and chiefs had been toyed with in the palms of their hands. The locals were filled with rage. The poison the locals were poisoned with was not fatal. This was just losing their spirit energy for an hour. Most of them would quickly recover their battle strength. "Kill the shamans! Kill the shamans!" The angry chiefs responded one by one, which spread to all the forest locals. When the gnomes saw this, they immediately opened the barrier. The large group of locals were like flowing water as they wildly charged into Green City. High Priest Mars in the Shaman Temple felt the sky shaking shouts, "The locals are killing their way in this quickly. Green City's attention has been attracted by the locals. Even if a portion of them are attracted, the shaman religion will have a chance." An army of several 100,000 plus the several dozen priests and 2,000 voodoo puppets in the temple. "I don't believe we can't take down a trivial Green City." But at this time, a large wave of flame arrows flew at the shaman temple, piercing into the walls, tables, and even statues. The flames immediately ignited the surrounding objects. High Priest Mars' face sunk. "The gnomes dare make a move before us. Go! Release the voodoo puppets and let them see the might of the shamans." The voodoo puppets charged out of the shaman temple like meteors. At this time, there were several thousand gnome archers and soldiers with 10 green protectors surrounding this place, wildly attacking the shaman temple. They suddenly saw a large group of sharp shadows charge out, and each one was covered in curse and witchcraft energy. The expressions of the Green religion priests changed when they saw this. "Be careful. These are the shaman religion's voodoo puppets." The archery skills of the half-elf archers were not much inferior to the elves. After spirit energy was poured into the arrows, only a flash of arrow light could be seen. The arrows were strangely fast and incomparably sharp. Several of the wizard puppets at the front were instantly sliced apart by the light. The voodoo puppets are only like this. When the gnomes were a bit careless, the voodoo puppets that were torn apart suddenly turned into poisonous insects that covered the sky like a small dark cloud. They instantly reformed in the middle of the gnome archers, turning back into the voodoo puppets and looking like they were not injured at all. The voodoo puppets were puppets that the shaman priests had spent a large amount of resources to refine. Their bodies were filled with curse and witchcraft energy, and before their energy was used up, they had almost immortal bodies. Ah! A gnome gave a pitiful cry. The voodoo puppet raised it into the air with a single hand, and its body began to wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then it inflated like a balloon, and with an explosive sound, countless poisonous insects and poison shot out from its body. The surrounding gnomes were not spared. Too terrifying. The witchcraft and curses on these monsters were too strong. Marzu walked out of the temple with a group of shaman priests. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and his skinny face looked like a gloomy skeleton. You fools from the green religion, if you want to attack the shaman temple, you won't be able to do it with just these few people. The shaman priests controlled the voodoo puppets. The battle strength of 2,000 voodoo puppets was enough to destroy an army. These gnomes were the elites of their race, but it was impossible for them to block the shaman's attack. Since you've sent yourselves to me, this old man won't be polite. Mars decided to first destroy the elites in front of him and then bring the voodoo puppet army to destroy the gnome castle. Kill them all. Quickly retreat. Quickly retreat. The gnomes were forced to retreat in a sorry state. The green protectors created a defensive barrier to cover their retreat. These few green protectors were of no use, so the shaman priests controlled the voodoo puppets to attack. Not long later, they broke through the big sister green protector and quickly chased after the escaping gnomes. Mars' face was filled with taunting and ridicule, but this expression did not last long. Because the gnomes had retreated into the middle of the large group of green religion priests, Mars' cheeks twitched a few times. He suddenly remembered that in the battle just now, the gnomes did not use the power of the green religion priests. There was only one possibility: they were pretending to be defeated to lure the enemy in. Come back. As soon as Mars gave the order, the green religion priests made a move before the shaman priests. There were no vines flying in the sky or summoned tree demons, there was only an incomparably large source energy array being activated by the green religion priests. This source energy array was something the shaman priests had never seen before, but what made the shaman priests incomparably shocked was that the witch puppet lost its balance as soon as it entered the source energy array, not even being able to stand properly. Following that, its skin and bones fell like mud, and those insects came out of its body with a sharp cry, as if they wanted to escape. However, when they fell to the ground, they did not even have time to struggle before they died. Almost in an instant. This large-scale source energy array killed several hundred voodoo puppets. This was enough to cause an incomparably large shock to the shaman priests. Chapter 4:16. Chu Tian stood far away on the hill, watching the situation unfold. The 20,000 gnome elites had already surrounded the shaman temple, not even a drop of water could trickle through. The array you gave the gnomes is too strong. Dolores's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw hundreds of shaman puppets being disintegrated by the array. These shamans are completely useless after meeting you. I'm really curious. It's your first time coming into contact with shamans. How can you break their witchcraft? The difference in our culture is not small, so it's hard for me to explain this. Just treat me as a genius who can predict the future, ha, ha, ha. If the other side was Ying, seeing Chu Tian's insolent appearance, she would have flipped out. Even if it was the young miss, she would have given him a fierce look. All right, my genius city lord. Dolores was not angry at all. Rather, she walked over to Chu Tian and massaged his shoulders. She used a charming voice to ask, I'm really curious. Just tell me, all right? I'm begging you. The fox girl's full body rubbed against him, intentionally or unintentionally. Her breath smelled like orchids and her devilish voice entered his ears. There weren't many people in this world that could endure it. How could Chu Tian not know what this fox girl was thinking? The shaman religion was a very strong religion, not only in the savage highlands and Green City, they also had a strong influence in many areas of the Forest of Chaos, suppressing the demonic god religion for many years. If she could obtain the method to deal with the shamans from Chu Tian, would she need to be afraid of these sinister and damned shamans in the future? Actually, witchcraft is a variation of an ancient technique. It is just a small trick in the end. It doesn't have the essence. As long as you can find a way to break it, any witchcraft can be destroyed. Chu Tian said halfway. As for the specific method, I can't reveal it for now. You can just work for me in the future. You can naturally learn anything you want. How could Dolores be satisfied with this kind of perfunctory answer? When Dolores was prepared to use the Fox clan's charm technique to interrogate this fellow, there were suddenly shouts coming from a direction. Northwest direction. It should be the shaman believers attacking. However, they never thought that the gnomes would resist so fiercely. This was because the locals on the other side did not have any effect on the gnomes. The gnomes' defenses were focused on the shamans, so it was impossible for the shamans to attack. Arnold and the other forest locals might even use the gnomes to deal with the shaman believers after learning the truth, so this should not be a problem. As for variables, the necromancer temple was under control. The druids would definitely not interfere in the situation. If these two shaman factions didn't participate, then the other churches and forest factions wouldn't have the guts to fish in troubled waters. The only variable now was the shaman temple. After all, there were over 1,000 shaman sorcerers in the shaman temple, and there were close to 100 shaman sorcerers with the title of priest. Adding the Wu puppet, it was a very terrifying force. If it played a role at a critical moment, it could still turn the tide of the battle to a certain extent. But unfortunately, the shaman sorcerer's most advantageous puppet could not play any role at all. These voodoo puppets were very high-level witchcraft crystals. Each puppet needed a large amount of time, resources, and energy to be refined. The Wu puppet's battle strength was around the 8-9th awakened soul layer, but its witchcraft curses were enough to kill a true spirit cultivator. The 2,000 voodoo puppets were the accumulation of the Green Country shamans over several generations. Just like how the Green Protectors were important to the gnomes, the voodoo puppets were the foundation of the shamans. Not to mention outsiders, even the shamans themselves did not know what fatal weakness the voodoo puppets had. Before these monsters ran out of energy, they could be reborn again and again. If the shaman priests were to assist them in battle, they would be able to replenish the strength of the Wu puppets in time. Up until now, there was no known effective method that could restrain these troublesome fellows. The actual combat strength of these 2,000 Wu puppets was definitely not inferior to an army of 100,000. It was because they had absolute confidence in the Wu puppets that the shaman sorcerers did not station an army in the shaman temple. Now that they were surrounded by the gnomes, their faces turned incomparably dark and they did not know what to do. The shaman religion's perfect voodoo puppets had been easily broken by the gnomes. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow. The shaman religion had no other choice. They could only call back the Wu puppets and prepare to defend the temple. The shaman temple had quite a few enchantments and witchcraft techniques, as well as the altar. If they relied on the shaman temple to defend, the gnomes would not be able to break in so easily. Stop them. Use the shaman breaking talisman arrows. The gnomes clearly understood the shaman sorcerer's plan. The archers in front pulled out arrows covered in talismans, and when the arrows left their hands, their spirit energy would activate the talisman. Each arrow contained the power of the shaman breaking talisman. When the Wu puppets were hit by the gnomes' arrows, they immediately let out pitiful cries. Their bodies began to fall like building blocks, finally turning into rotten meat and worms on the ground. There was no need to say. This was also Chu Tian's masterpiece. After Chu Tian taught the shaman witchcraft talisman arrays to the gnomes had created these talisman arrows to deal with the shaman sorcerers. Once the source energy array on the talisman was activated and the arrows were shot into the Wu puppet's body, the talisman energy would cut off the witchcraft connection on the Wu puppet. The Wu puppet would suffer a backlash from the curse power and turn into minced meat, without any way to recover. Like this. The shaman sorcerers had been completely countered. Damn! Marzu was filled with rage as he muttered some words. The corpses of the gnomes he had killed earlier all gathered above his head as if they had lost gravity. Countless limbs wrapped around each other, like a giant invisible hand rolling dough into a ball, instantly turning it into a several-meter-wide meatball. Clark's expression slightly changed when he saw this. Be careful. He is using a high-level shaman witchcraft. The meatball floating above Mars's head gradually turned red before turning purple. Large amounts of poison seeped out and the meatball inflated like it was filled with air. Finally it was thrown into the gnome area. Clark raised the long staff with both hands and a green light was released. Great forest god, please bestow me strength. After saying this, the long staff was inserted into the ground and countless branches and vines came out, locking down the meatball in the air like chains. These vines were filled with the green religion priest's power, so even if it was cut by wind blades, burned by flames, or smashed by giant rocks, they would not be able to harm it at all. However, they could only temporarily stop this terrifying witchcraft. Originally when the green vines touched the meatball, they immediately released the curse power and quickly withered. At this time, the meatball was already riddled with holes and large amounts of poison gas was being released from inside. There were cracks on the surface of the meatball and it was clear it was about to explode. Hong! The moment the gigantic meatball exploded, it was like a mighty sandstorm. Countless tiny pieces of meat splattered forward. Every piece of meat contained a witchcraft curse. As long as it splashed onto any living creature, it would instantly fester and die. Forest barrier. Clark was already prepared and suddenly summoned a giant green barrier in front of him. Almost instantly, the green barrier was covered in a layer of dark red. Other than the countless pieces of meat, there were also large amounts of disgusting witchcraft insects that were swimming around the barrier. The meatball exploded and all the plants within several hundred meters were contaminated. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the poison gas that spread out formed a barrier, making it impossible for the gnomes to chase after them. Wherever it went, all the plants would wither and there would be all kinds of dangerous witchcraft insects crawling over them. So powerful. Dolores saw this scene from afar, truly worthy of being the shaman's high priest. If this attack had landed in a densely packed area, perhaps it would have killed over 1,000 people. Chu Tian was also a bit surprised. This shaman sorcerer from the savage highlands did have some skill, his cultivation was not lower than the 4th true spirit layer. Because witchcraft was too hard to deal with, normal cultivators of the same level would find it hard to fight him. Mars' attack created a world for the shamans and all the shamans immediately retreated into the temple. The green religion priests all made their moves. Countless vines and grass were injected with energy and they wildly grew like they were alive. They were like thick pythons that charged forward to attack, but they were still a step too late. The sorcerers had already retreated and the entrance to the shaman temple was protected by a barrier. The green religion priests could not directly cut it open, so the countless vines could only wrap around the altar, not letting the people inside come out. Mars, your scheme has been completely exposed. Clark loudly shouted, don't needlessly prick us, you won't have another chance. The shaman sorcerers were trapped in the temple. Their faces were all like dead ashes. Even if they reacted slowly now, they would still understand what was going on. The shaman witchcraft had been broken by the gnomes, so the shaman's plan could not be carried out. The shamans were trapped in the shaman temple and although they could rely on the temple's power to protect themselves, how could they stay here forever? The witchcraft that Mars had just cast was extremely powerful, but it had obviously consumed a lot of energy as well. At this moment, he was panting heavily, and his eyes were filled with frustration and anger. Hateful half-elf, hateful Clark. If I catch him, I'll torture him to death bit by bit with 10,000 wizard Gus. A green-skinned orc priest came over. High priest, the green religion priests have already sealed the temple and we can't use witchcraft on the outside. What should we do now? Since it's like this, we can't just sit here and wait for death. Mars said with a dark expression, first use the altar to recover our strength and then we'll kill our way out. We'll let them understand that the shaman sorcerers are not easy to deal with. Luz, you'll lead the charge later and I'll cover for you. Luz thought about it for a few seconds. I have an idea that might be more beneficial to our situation. Mars looked at his assistant. Tell me about it. We can. Luz walked to Mars's side and prepared to continue speaking. A colorful large centipede came out of his sleeve and shot out like an arrow, biting the old troll's neck. Kill you and then take your head to Green City. Mars gave a pitiful cry. This centipede was a wizard insect that Luz had refined for many years. Even if it was an earth dragon that was bitten by it, the poison inside would instantly cause it to fester. Chapter 4:17. Mars's cultivation was above Luz's, so this kind of sneak attack would not work normally. But Marzu had consumed a large amount of energy and was not on guard against Luz, so Luz's sneak attack was successful. Luz was a fierce and decisive person. Since he had decided to kill the high priest, of course he would not show any mercy. The seven-tailed centipede he had refined could kill anyone here in a single bite, but it could not kill this fellow in front of him. When the centipede bit Marzu, Luz's palm struck out, slamming into Marzu's chest. Although the shaman sorcerers could not cultivate normal cultivation techniques, with Luz's true spirit realm cultivation, just releasing his spirit energy was enough to create a very strong destructive might. Marzu's ribs shattered and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Like a broken glass person, he was instantly sent flying, slamming into an altar and causing the altar to cave in. High Priest. The shaman sorcerers' faces fell as they stared at Luz, who had sneak attacked Marzu. The shaman priests by Luz's side stood up, looking like they were blocking these sorcerers for Luz. A shaman priest roared out with a face filled with anger and confusion, "We're facing a great enemy. What do you mean by this?" "What do I mean? I want to ask him what Marzu means." Luz walked forward with a dark expression. None of the shamans dared block him. Attack Green City? This is a method of mutual destruction, but you want us to jump into a pit of fire. Even if we win, what meaning does a ruined Green City have to us? Even if we win, can we withstand the anger of the eternal forest? The savage highlands are merely treating us as dispensable chess pieces. Could it be that you're willing to be manipulated like this? The shaman sorcerers had ugly expressions on their faces. Luz shouted, "I have already discussed the conditions with the new Green City City Lord. As long as we leave the savage highlands, the shamans can still live here and we will receive Green City's protection. Perhaps our influence will greatly decrease, but at least we will be free." The shaman religion was split into two factions. One was the highland shamans represented by Mars and the other was the green country shamans represented by Luz. The two sides were in a standoff. Jia, jia, jia. A human figure came out of the hole in the altar. He had a head of white hair and was covered in blood, looking like a terrifying demon. His skin was festering and there was poisonous blood flowing out. It was clear that he was deeply poisoned. What a good traitor who betrays his master for glory. Without a religion, where would the green country shamans come from? Today, I'll kill you, a traitor, and clean up the sect. The priest beside Luz paled. This old fellow had been hit by Luz's seven-tailed centipede, and had taken 2 full force palms from Luz without any defense, and still hadn't died? The high priestess seemed to be more powerful than most people had imagined. Marzu saw Luz's ugly expression, and immediately laughed wildly, surprised. "You haven't learned all the techniques of the highland shamans." During the conversation, Mars spat out a few bugs. Each one was round like a blood-sucking leech, but at this moment, they were motionless. Their bodies were bruised and black, emitting poisonous gas. Not long after, they turned into a pool of poisonous blood, corroding a large piece of the sturdy floor. The other shaman sorcerers instantly understood. The high priestess had placed a witchcraft spell in his body and these parasites were in his body. When Luz's seven-tailed centipede bit the high priestess, these parasites had absorbed most of the curse and poison. Therefore, although the high priestess' injuries were not light, they were not fatal. Luz felt this was bad, but he would not collapse. Luz was very clear on the strength of his seven-tailed centipede. Although the high priestess had dissolved most of the poison with witchcraft, there was still a small portion remaining in his body. Adding in the injuries from Mars's 2 palms, he would not be able to recover so easily. Then let me experience the witchcraft of the Highland shamans. Luz's source spirit was completely released and it was gray in color. After it condensed, it turned into a fierce-looking puppet. This puppet had small eyes and a mouth that reached the back of its ears. There were insects drilling into its 7 orifices, making it look very fierce and terrifying. Each shaman source spirit was like this. This was similar to the members of the giant shark gang in southern Xia. When the giant shark gang received the baptism of the sea race's inheritance, their source spirits would turn into giant sharks. When a shaman sorcerer turned into a shaman sorcerer, their source spirit would also change. It was this kind of sorcerer puppet. The shaman priest's witchcraft power came from this source spirit puppet. Mars also released a sorcerer puppet. His source spirit was clearly stronger and the sorcerer puppet instantly shot out a tooth from its finger. This tooth was not big and looked like a human tooth. The surface of the tooth was covered in witchcraft runes and the sorcerer puppet's power shot out. One could only see an almost invisible gray shadow. The tooth contained a fatal witchcraft power and Luz quickly dodged to the side. A shaman sorcerer standing in a straight line was hit instead of him, but it was like a drop of water falling on his body. The tooth actually disappeared without a trace. Almost in the next second. The shaman gave a pitiful cry. He spat out a large mouthful of blood from his mouth. It was more accurate to say he didn't spit, but rather escape. Most of the blood in his body came out from his mouth, eyes, and nostrils. His eyeballs, brain, heart, and organs all turned into fragments. This shaman sorcerer instantly turned into a dried-up corpse as he fell to the ground. Luz's sleeve shook a few times and 6-7 beetles came out of his palm, finally forming a small ball the size of half a fist. This time it was Mars's turn to quickly dodge. The insect ball Luz threw hit the wall and exploded. The entire shaman temple shook a few times and the insect ball sprayed out a large amount of blood, leaving a giant mark on the wall. It's only so. Marzu gave a cold laugh. Luz's witchcraft was only inferior to Marzu's, but his cultivation base was too far apart. This was not something that could be easily dealt with. Marzu believed he had at least a 70% chance of winning. There was no time. The 7-tailed centipede's poison was still spreading in his body. After Marzu suppressed the poison, his face became darker and darker. The priest robes on his body began to tremble without any wind and a strong witchcraft energy leaked out of his source spirit's 7 orifices, revolving around his body like a whirlwind. Everyone could feel Marzu's intentions. He decided to use his witchcraft to take care of Luz once and for all. But at this time, something that no one could have imagined happened. A vine suddenly pierced through the wall and instantly pierced through Marzu's back, coming out of his chest. The blood-stained vine continued to pierce through a pillar and his heart and lungs were instantly torn apart. Marzu was thrown into the air by a strong force. His eyes were wide open and his face was filled with disbelief. How was this possible? How could the temple be so easily broken? When Marzu saw that the vine had pierced through the wall, it was right in the middle of Luz's insect ball that had exploded. He suddenly understood something. The insect ball's target, perhaps it was not him. The blood that sprayed out contained a large amount of witchcraft energy. It was like a strong acid splashing onto the wall, quickly melting the temple's wall and finally creating a large hole. At the same time, it weakened the defenses of the temple from the inside. The gnome's vines had already turned the temple into a large dumpling and they could definitely feel the defenses of this area weakening. Clark had directly cut through the wall and killed the troublesome Marzu with a single attack. Don't think you'll have an easy time even if I die. You'll all be buried with me. Marzu's tall figure moved a few times and his gray hair suddenly turned scarlet red. His skin was covered in small bumps, like there were many insects moving in his body. Moreover, there were more and more of them as they swelled up. In just a few seconds, he had turned into a balloon filled with air. This is bad. He's going to self-destruct. Quickly run. The shaman sorcerers cried out in fear as they all ran. Marzu's body released a thunderous sound and the entire hall was covered in a layer of blood red. This was the power of Marzu's witchcraft energy and it contained a strong curse power. Some of the slower shaman sorcerers were hit by a bit. Their bodies immediately went out of control as they swelled up like Marzu. Then they exploded like balloons, turning into a large wave of blood-red energy. This energy landed on other people's bodies and caused a large explosion. This was already no longer self-destructing. Marzu had used one person to self-destruct to cause several dozen people to explode. If this move was used in the center of the city where there were many people, perhaps the entire city would be turned into a land of death in a matter of minutes. Luz had just escaped with a small portion of the shaman sorcerers when the temple was already a sea of blood. Clark immediately raised his hand when he saw this. Quickly seal the shaman temple, don't let this power leak out. The green religion priests all made a move. Vines stacked on top of each other, finally forming a giant semicircle on the ground. The vines stacked on top of each other was several feet thick and contained a powerful sealing power. Even if there was a strong explosion inside, this power would not leak out even a bit. Powerful, truly powerful. Dolores patted her full chest. That old thing is truly sinister. It's a good thing we didn't participate in the battle, otherwise we would have suffered a large loss. The shaman high priest is dead and the battle is over. Let's go over as well. When Chu Tian brought Dolores over, the gnomes had already begun to clean up the battlefield. Luz and the several dozen surviving shaman sorcerers had been captured by the gnomes, waiting to be dealt with. Luz saw Chu Tian and immediately shouted, "Sir City Lord, I've already done as you said." Chu Tian waved his hand at the gnomes, indicating for them to be released. The gnomes of course did not immediately do this and first asked Clark for his opinion. Clark also had no choice. The gnomes could easily win mainly because of Chu Tian, so he could only wave his hand, let them go. Chu Tian threw the antidote to Luz. You've made the right choice, now end this battle without any benefits. I think you don't want all the shaman believers to die in this chaos. Luz repeatedly nodded. This battle had already caused the shaman sorcerers heavy losses. If all of the shaman's followers died, without any new blood to replenish them, the shaman religion might really be unable to recover from this setback. This battle had no meaning. The shaman religion had already suffered a crushing defeat and there was no chance for them to make a comeback. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.